Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got episode 220 today, did you say?
220, we've split the area code so much it's southeastern Ohio today.
Southeastern Ohio. Okay.
Southeastern Ohio. There's no really name city. So if you're from southeastern Ohio and you're going to yell at me because I didn't name your city, I'm sorry, but that's where we are.
Well, we know Dave Little's going to chime in with all capital letters, giving us some kind of griff about he's not from Cincinnati.
He's in Columbus, and that's not southeastern Ohio.
Okay, I just don't want to make him mad at us again. You know how he gets. Okay.
Yes, I do. Yes,
right.
I do.
Anyway, ways to get
never make a doctor upset.
No, we don't want to do that. Ways to get a hold of us. Digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. Digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Now, Ron, here in episode 220, we are actually live on YouTube with a couple of very special guests in the house. We have a big Jets fan, by the way, this guy here.
Yes.
Greg Barath. Greg, thanks for joining us here on the show.
Dave, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, he's also known as Ogard62 on the Delphi forums, and he's got some fantastic football replays, which I'm now following very intently because he's playing one of my favorite seasons, 1976. So I'm going to go back and follow that. And Jucket, he played the opening day for the Buccaneers. And I think it was 26-20 was his game, and the actual score was 20-0. So it was 26-0, and the actual was 20-0. And I thought that was pretty cool, for an opening day game. And not to skip over this gentleman here, but from the APBA Football Club, we have Geoff. Geoff, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir. What you do is amazing, and so it's a real privilege and honor.
Oh, thank you. So now, where are you right now? You're on the road, right?
We are in lovely Cooperstown, New York for the second APBA baseball tournament inside the Hall of Fame here.
That's awesome.
Expanded to 2 days. It was a whirlwind day, a lot of incredible games. Speaking of APBA football, Joe Sweeney, Makojo, is showed here, and he did a lot of football utilities. Greg Barath can tell you a lot about that, I'm sure. He's a legend in APBA and football particularly.
Oh, fantastic. Nice. All righty, so we're going to have you guys on today, and we're going to talk, obviously, some APBA football, maybe some APBA, baseball things in general as well. Before we get going, though, we do have one question we ask all our guests, and Geoff, I'll start with you with this question. If you could go back in time and attend any sporting event whatsoever, even one you've already been to, what would you go back and watch again?
I would go back to 1980 Steelers at Bucks because I was at that game. My dad ran a small paper in town north of Orlando, and we had press passes, and so I got to go down to on the sideline for the second half and take some photos. And I was standing right now. I hear this ball hitting, and I turn around, and like Bradshaw and Harris are right there. I would love to go because I was completely awed. And I got to go, I stepped in the locker room and I saw Dwight White naked, and I turned right around. So I would have had more guts to say, hey, man, good game. But
mean Joe Green didn't offer you a Coke?
Yeah, didn't throw his jersey at you?
I think he was probably on the plane back home or something.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's fantastic. All righty. All right, so Greg, what about you? If you could go back in a time machine, what game would you go
see? That'd be January 12th, 1969. I would love to have been there at Super Bowl III.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
It's too bad you're a Colt fan.
I remember, I was just a little guy, in 69. I don't, 6 years old or whatever. And I remember my dad, man, he had so much action on that game. He had so many bets on that game. And then, and my cousin too. And then when Namath made that guarantee on the Wednesday before the game, my cousin said, "To hell with it. I'm not even taking the points no more. I just take the Jets straight up." They both won a ton of money.
Wow.
So, that would be the game I like to be at, of course.
We had one, who was it, Ron, that said that he was at the George Brett Pine Tar game.
That's right.
And his uncle pulled him out early to beat traffic, and he never saw that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Imagine being at that game, and it's like, oh, boy, we made it home quick. And he's listening on the radio. He's like, what did we miss? He wanted to go back and finish that game live. That's a tough one.
I believe there probably wasn't any speaking to that family member for years after that.
Yeah, that was the uncle. He's like, we're going to beat traffic. Let's go. And they left, and they missed the whole pine tar.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of one of the really sad ones that we've had on here. But anyway, all righty. So we got some people in the chat room. Jeff, thanks for coming by. Thespian, thanks for coming by too. Patrick is stopping by as well, and Keith is in the house, as well as a handful of other people. Feel free to chat. We will be taking questions in a little bit, by the way, for these gentlemen, either for them or about APBA football or APBA in general. We'll do what we can to answer them. Let's start with you, Jeff. How did you get into tabletop gaming? What were some of the first games that you played, and then how did you get into APBA football?
Sure. Like a lot of folks in the 70s, war games were big. Avalon Hill. I was a big Red Baron fan because a friend of mine up in Maine played me the Snoopy and the Red Baron single. So I found that Avalon Hill game with Rick Toffin's War and getting all those. And my dad was a football guy, so I found Catico, the photo football, the one, not with the electric one with the bulb in it, but the one where you'd have an offense play, a defense play, put them in the envelope, put it on the pins, and you'd slide it off and see where the play went.
Oh, okay. Never heard of that one.
And then Pay Dirt, of course, the great one with the Cowboys and the Redskins on a cover. And then, of course, Street and Smith came along, and I watching that magical 78 season, and we saw a lot of the Steeler games in Central Florida. And Bradshaw had just such poise, and just a lot of incredible storylines that season. And it was, it came down to the Street and Smith ad. And in the version I saw, the Street and Smith ad was kind of the Stratomatic ad was kind of an illustration. It didn't really show the product. And so I think I kind of confused it with one of those, you remember all the betting, the prognosticators had all those ads. And then the APBA page actually looked like it was the product. It replicated some of those big color brochures. And so I was sold on APBA because really, and I'm not the only one, I've come to find out, is that, when you collected the Topps cards, I always thought, wouldn't it be great to put them on?
Oh, sure.
And a lot of other folks had the same idea, apparently. So, having the individual cards was just.
Did they actually have a picture of a card in the ad?
Yeah. They had the whole setup. If you look at the old APBA pages, and you can go to the APBA game site, they have an archive. We contributed a bunch, and a lot of folks did. The old, brochure would show usually the Super Bowl teams, Super Bowl 8. Okay. Super Bowl 9, and they'd walk you through. I mean, those brochures are legends. So.
Maybe it was on Facebook today, an ad for the baseball game from 73, and the cards are Tom Seaver and Rusty Staub, which Staub actually had a pretty good card for 73. But yeah, I figured that would be a much better way to do that than, I suppose, than just the illustration, the quarterback or whatever that Strat might have had. What about you, Greg? What got you into gaming?
Well, my dad was a big APBA guy. And he played some of the football, but he was all baseball. He was pure. And he used to do replays. I wish, Ron, that I could. He used to write real small, and he'd have all those spiral notepads, and he'd do all his replays on them. And I think over the years, my mom probably discarded them. And
roll the eyes, like what are you doing?
I wish I still had that. Because he would be so into it, and. He replayed the 61 season because he was a big Maris, baseball purist. And so that's how I got into it.
Okay.
I used to go up to him. I used to tell the story. He'd have that card table set up in the middle of the living room, and he'd have it there for months. It'd drive my mom nuts,
Oh, I bet it did.
Nothing she could do about it, So I would go up to him. I'd be like 12 years old. I'd go up to him. I'd say, hey, Dad, can I play? And he'd look at me, and he'd put that big hand out like this, and he'd say, son, this is not for you. This is serious.
That's interesting because the whole point of these games was to be advertised to those of us who were kids.
Yeah, I know. He didn't get that memo, Ron.
So when did APBA football come out? I mean, APBA baseball just celebrated
58, right? Jeff was the first set.
Oh,
okay. Really? Oh, wow. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And this is an original game by Sites. Now, APBA baseball was a former national pastime, so this was Sites' first full.
That's right.
Oh, and Geoff is showing Dick Sites' card.
Hang on, let me solo you one. Hang on, let me solo you out on that, and so we can take a look at that.
Yeah, this is from the reprint of National Pastime.
Wow.
Okay. That's baseball for the audio people.
Brought that along. Yeah, it's APBA football is his really, I consider the first original APBA game, sure.
So 58 then for all the NFL teams. And so, Greg, did your dad play that as well, or was he strictly baseball?
I don't know if he had the 58 season. He played football, but he didn't like the football game nearly like he did the baseball game. Because there were some issues still, back then with the 60s, see, Geoff knows. And so I would play around with his football a little bit because he wouldn't let me touch the baseball.
You're kidding, yeah.
All right, so Greg, where are you now in the whole APBA thing? Because you playing a ton of APBA, you have the whole website thing going and replays. How do we get to this point?
What do you mean? How did I?
Well, just the whole involvement in making videos and the whole bit. What got you into doing that?
Hobby. I used to back in the day. I used to be a pool player, and so I'd be. I was on the road for a while and did all that. And long story short, that game controlled my life for probably 30 years, and not in a good way, And so my wife, she liked it when I finally put the cue down, and that's when I got back into APBA and got into APBA football. And it was around early 2000 when I delved into it heavy again. And so she always liked to hear the dice because she knew I was home. You know what? Oh, Merle Haggard had it right. Those jukebox records don't play those wedding bells. You're out in the honky tonks in the bars. That's not the place you want to be as a married man.
No. What was your pool game of choice?
Oh, 9-ball.
Oh, 9-ball?
Yeah.
That's great.
I got into APBA football, and it morphs. It's a hobby, and one thing leads to another. Not a good answer, but that's how it happened.
You just enjoyed sharing.
I'm sorry.
I just say, so you're just enjoying sharing your joy for the game and helping some people with some videos that you're doing and instructional, and your whole website there, with all the.
A lot of it, Dave, too, is you fill in the voids. Okay, if I never seen a ton of instructional videos when I did them, so I took it on and created them myself. Usually when there's a void, somebody will step in and fill, and that's for everything I've done. It's basically that.
That's it.
Back at the time when I started out, it's been 10 years since I've had my website. Really, Geoff and I were the only ones I think that had an online presence at that point. Am I right, Geoff?
Yes, sir.
You're with the football, with the APBA Facebook group that yours and my website.
Yeah, and it was good. We approached it
besides BTL, between the lines, Yeah,
so that was the thing. I mean, trying to get between the lines is great, and then it's the real deep end of the pool. It's like galactic in terms of but with emerging social media, I took the Facebook route because I wanted to, and it was completely accidental, but I wanted to get that number up. I mean, you get obsessed with that counter, and Greg wisely took the blog route where he's got everything, archived so that it's much more of a standing thing, that it's a more perpetual resource.
Geoff, have you been a steady player since the early 80s?
No, I've had, I think this is my fifth, I would call APBA life. I dropped, because I'm probably the last person who should even have a gaming channel, because I was just like, oh, Steelers are doing bad. I'm out of it. I can't stand it. And then the Giants were doing well. My dad is from Rhode Island. So I said, hey, maybe I'll get my dad to. It's the complete opposite of Greg. So I got the master game finally, and I got a bunch of 70s teams during a warehouse sale, and then tried to get him into it. He wasn't into it, so I dropped it again. Roethlisberger came on, and I was like, let me grab and see where they are now. As I was surprised, those Greg knows those cards with no backs on them and all, and
perforated cards.
Oh yeah, that was fun. I ordered a bunch of those sets. I get Chads all over the house. And then did 2011 to like 2016, and then came back in 22. So it comes and goes. Like you said, it morphs, and I think it's good to take a break. I mean, Greg is like, no one on the planet is going to play the number of games and the way he plays it. So he's the utmost resource and probably the greatest thing that's happened to the game.
So, Greg, what made the game click for you?
Well, I'm a football guy. I love football. Played it, love it, breathe it. It's one of my passions. And what I like about APBA football is it replicates the ebb and flow of an actual game. You're playing, Dave, now he's getting into playing. Mm-hmm. Don't you feel it when you're playing the game? It's like you're watching it on Sunday afternoon.
I keep saying that. I tell Ron that. Yep. I was talking to somebody today about, maybe it was you, Ron, on the way home, and I was like, I can't believe how this football game feels like I'm watching a football game on TV. All the quirks that happen, all the things. There was one game I played in 78. It was L.A. Rams at Philadelphia, and the Rams punter had 2 fumbles on punts. So I'm thinking maybe it's pouring rain and the snap went through his hands, but 2 punts in a row, I rolled the fumble on the kicker, and they were done. And Philadelphia, picked up a touchdown and a field goal. That's 10 easy points off the punter's mistakes. And that stuff happens, and it could be 2 in a game. It just, it's rare, but and I talk all the time about history maker golf from play, how that feels like you're watching the tournament play out, and then the 18 holes down the stretch as the back group is the top guys playing in, and you're seeing who's hanging around from the top group. That feels like you're watching Sunday golf, and APBA football feels like you're watching Sunday football.
Absolutely. The other thing that got me into it is I wanted a game that I could shuffle different personnel packages, because today's pro game. It's not like it was in the 70s. Everybody in 21 personnel, 2 tight, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. Now there's so many different personnel groups, and you can do that in APBA. And that was really what got me back into that, because I wanted a game to where I could have a 2 tight end set, go to 3 wide. That and then so APBA does that, and that scratches my itch.
Had you played other football games?
Little Avalon Hill when I was a kid, The only board game, Ron, that I played nuts to bolts and just couldn't get enough was Title Bout boxing.
Oh, that's a great game.
And I must have, God, I can't tell you how many rounds of Title Bout I've done, but
I bought 2 for the computer. It's a fantastic.
It is. It's just tremendous.
Geoff, what made APBA football click for you?
I think everything that Greg has said. I mean, the idea. I mean, it's not even like you're watching the game. It's like you feel the excitement from the kickoff, and then you can feel the futility at times.
Oh yeah,
It's just struggling 3 and out. You can't do anything, and it's that intricacy of this system. It's simple. Some people might say it's simplistic, but I contend, and I know Greg, it's not some relic, and you're finding that out. It is a hugely formative and influential game, and it is a simple replication of personal and team strengths compared to one another, combined with the results by field position that make it harder to get that yardage from your opponent's 9 to goal line. That was genius. And to be able to see, the 85 Bears are 50-point pass defense, 47 run versus, the Buccaneers originally were like 26 offense, 29 defense. And with every player rated 1 to 5, you've got that window of 55 to 11. You're never going to see a team down at 11. That'd be like Pop Warner. But, in those 20s, to up until the mid-30s and then the high 30s to 40s, you see those gradations. And if you follow our APBA football handbook, you'll see, as you look at the 79 Niners with Joe Montana as an XF, an extra football player, it's like a one-pointer, and then 2 years later, and you see that progression, and the numbers are popping off the card like crazy. It's like, wow. It's just you can line these personnel up and see the growth,
Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things about APBA, whether it's the baseball, the hockey, the football, because that's what I play a little bit of golf, but not much, is the base game is fine, but you really can make it your own with some little tweaks without wrecking the game or wrecking the results of the game. At least that's kind of how I feel, because I've done the hockey game. I've really kind of made some changes, mostly just to how the penalties are handled and things like that.
You've really done a good job making that game your own.
But that game, the instructions were kind of weird and clunky, and things were spelled out. But I managed to kind of polish the edge of that hockey to now I can bang on a game, and it feels like a hockey game. And I'm still sticking with the core part of the game. And that's what I noticed with the football. And Greg was bringing up how he likes to bring in 2 tight ends and all this other stuff. And I noticed that when he plays, at least through his videos, he's always modifying the defensive number, and I think Tebow does this too, is that, when he brings in somebody, he changes the offense number. What I'm doing as a beginner is I'm just kind of going with the starter numbers, and that's my offense and defense number for the day, unless like I say, the quarterback's out. Like I think Ken Anderson's out for the 78 Bengals, and Reeves is in, or something like that. So he dropped 1 because he was 1 less. So the offense that day will be 1 less. But for the most part, I'm just kind of letting it run. And I figure if they're bringing in a second tight end, well, they're bringing in an extra lineman. And I just kind of let that play out because I don't know enough about football to make all those changes. So for me, kind of running it basically is almost as much fun as I think Greg's having by making it his own with all the changes. And I think that's what APBA does great is you can really just kind of make it your own or leave it as is, and it's still great.
Yeah. I know when I play a game, I think, like 16 different innovations I use, in every game, and it doesn't slow me down one bit, That's the beautiful thing about APBA football is you could play it out of the box, or you could use a ton of different innovations that people have come up with over the years to enhance the realism of it. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah,
and Geoff knows him. My best friend Mark Zarb, he's an incredible innovator, and he's come up with some just game-changing innovations for stuff like yards per catch innovation that really make the difference between your possession receivers and your Homer Joneses of the world, the deep threats, Cliff Branch type receivers. There's innovations out there that really take the game to the next level.
Yeah, it does. We need to get him back. We had him on and we talked about his contributions to APBA hockey. But we need to get him. Yeah. We need to get him back on the show and talk about the APBA football at some point too.
Is it possible to do cross era? I know it'd be very hard to get any cross era in football to be realistic, just for kickers and that. But
I always think about old Danny Hodge, who used the cards, good friend of mine, and of course Geoff knew him too. And I was playing him in a face-to-face game at convention a few years back, and he had the 63 Browns, and I had my 93 Cowboys. And man, I tell you, it ain't even fair, man. You got a 70% passer, going against, a 50% passer, Jim Brown, as great as Jim Brown was, his linemen are out, if it was in real life, they're outweighed by 80 pounds.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
I shut down. It wasn't even fair, and so it's hard.
It is.
Geoff and I had an experience kind of like that too when I was there with the '99 Rams playing your Lions.
I'm reading my wrap up of Canton 2013. I was convinced that I could take the 62 Lions. I just want to say, hey, they beat the Packers. They're the only game that
That's right.
It's a case where on paper, the game's going to perform hyper well. It's tough to get that, kind of momentum aspect and the intangibles. But yeah, Greg, you had the I played you against your 2011 Saints, and it was 28-7 after 3 quarters, and we called it.
Yes.
And and I'm sorry about this, Greg, I brought the 68 Jets to Canton last year, and I played Dave Weatherby in the 2019 Chiefs, and I rolled like 3 straight sacks of Namath, just like, that's the other uncanny thing was basically replicating.
Well, you got, a 50% passer there going against Mahomes, I mean, it's
not possible.
It ain't fair,
But it shows you exactly that's why that's not going to work. Because unless you've got now, and in some of the newer versions of these sets, case in point, the 66 Bears, where you had Johnny Morris. Now, here's a big issue. If you're as played, Johnny Morris, I think, right, was injured in the second play of the second game, but he has a card now. He didn't have one in the 30-card original. He now has a card, and he's an A-rated receiver. So do you let him play out the season like you would and maybe have a couple of extra guys and maybe amp up that 66 team to a 65-35 pass run team just for the kicks? Who knows?
Well, I always wondered about the kicking game.
If you wanted to, you could do it,
I've always wondered about the kicking game because, you play again, a Jim Brown team against a modern team, and I can't imagine that those old Cleveland teams are kicking 50, 60 yards field goals.
So Grosso was pretty good.
I'm sorry, Dave, the other issue is in the punting game. Just in the 76 season right here, I'm shocked rolling these games how poorly the punting was in 76.
Yeah, 35 yards was a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
That's why Ray got
it's horrendous. It's.
Well, the Tampa kicker, what was it? Dave Green. He was kicking and punting, and he
could. A rotor right now for him. I'm just playing him right now. I got the first half of the game against the Chargers, and they're down 21-0.
Yeah.
Opening kickoff, they fumble a return, and Chargers recover
this
at
guy,
the Tampa 8-yard line.
Me and Ron
went. The game starts.
Ron and I went through the statistics for that 76 Tampa team, especially the kickers. And Ron, what was he making? Like 60% of the extra points? Or something like that. It was every time I play a game, no matter what game it is, quick play, long play, it's like he's missing kicks left and right. Hey,
Ron, I got Tampa just moving the ball is a struggle. Okay.
Oh, I'm sure.
I got them down to the Charger 5-yard line. The drive stalled. So in game 2, Roeder was the kicker, and he comes out, and of course he misses the 22-yard field goal attempt.
It is, and again, you feel, and that's where you really feel. I will say though, in Dave Green's defense, I played the 76 season with the original set, and his field goal percentage came out spot on, 57.1%.
Oh, nice!
It's ugly, but it's accurate.
But it's accurate. That's right.
Now, I'm going to show you guys something here. All right, This is a little spoiler. I haven't done the official unboxing yet, but I did pick up a couple of things for my birthday in a couple of weeks, and I'm not going to play it till the birthday. It's coming up in a couple of weeks, but I will give you a little spoiler of what I did get.
What do you got there, Broadway Joe?
That's 68. I can't see.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Greg, would you rather have a 67 or a 68 card?
So I actually,
that 4,000-yard season. Jeff, I replayed that season a few times, multiple times, using a first-generation set created by Mark.
I got the.
I'm going to buy the Apple one and do that one just to do it.
The Super Bowl set. That's what I got.
God,
so I didn't get the whole season. I just got the Super Bowl for that.
Now, if you play that game 10 times, how many times do the Colts win? I guess.
But probably maybe 10 out of 10 or 9. I've played a lot of games, and one of the greatest games probably the greatest game I ever played. And it was I was still living in Virginia at the time. That shows you how long ago it was. Okay. And I just had a mini replay going. I used to like to do them where I would take a Super Bowl team. So like I'd take the 68 with the Colts and the Jets, and I'd replay their season. So I'd play the Colts, and then I'd play the Jets week 1, week 2. I'd alternate. And then I'd skip the playoffs, and I'd play a Super Bowl. So the Colts were just really dominating the game, but turnovers kept the score manageable. They were down by 10. And like 9 minutes left in that game, the worm turned, man. It had turned my way. And Geoff, man, the dice, they smiled on Joe. And the Jets came back and won that game, man. It was the greatest game I've ever played.
I played that in 2nd and 10, and the Jets won.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell you what, man. I mean, that's
I don't think it was as much of a fluke as people thought it was.
Well, it's going to be. I'm going to play it.
I mean,
we'll see how it gets.
With nameless quick release, the Colts, they didn't change anything. They were a heavy blitz team, and hard to blitz Broadway Joe with that. Maybe the only guy in the history of football might have had a quick release in Reno. That's a coin flip. I mean, that's a coin flip, man.
Greg, you should check out Brent Musburger was on Dan Patrick over the Super Bowl because Musburger is based out of Vegas now.
Okay.
And he talks about, because if you look at the famous picture of Namath in the lounge chair during the guarantee, Musburger is in that picture. He was a reporter for one of the Chicago papers.
Okay.
So he's down in Miami for that, and Musburger tells that story in great detail of that, and how a lot of those reporters weren't surprised, pretty much because they knew that Baltimore wouldn't change all that much, just like you said.
No, they didn't change nothing. They figured it'd be good enough. How can you blame them? I mean, when they beat the snot out of the Browns, shut them out to get in, and one loss. They said they were at that point in time the greatest team. Some were hyping as the greatest team ever.
Right.
So, yeah.
But we know from your replays that's the 91 Redskins, right?
Well, you know what? I haven't done the 91 season. So
was that Zarb?
Yeah,
that was Mark Zarb that ran the table with the 91 Redskins.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
nice. So let me ask you this: when did they switch to the newer style cards like this from the old style? When was that?
From the perforated sheets?
Well, there's several old and new. There's lots of old and new periods.
Yeah, well, okay, get me up to speed on that.
Go ahead, Geoff. Answer. You know better than me, so.
So let's go through quickly as I can. So the game comes out in 1958 with the 1957 season, which had that really incredible NFC West playoff.
Jim Brown's rookie year, too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So APBA, just got it so right between that big game and the greatest game ever played. That version of the game and the boards lasted until about 65, and then they did a version. And in both the original 57 and 65 sets, they had to correct all the quarterback cards. They issued corrections, but the boards changed a bit. And then in 72, they issued a third version of the pre-mastered boards, which I have here, which had they started using the injury ratings, and they had this allocation chart. And in the 72 set, you could only use allocations for the defenders, and then they used that chart to add codes to the receivers and anyone who caught a pass starting with the 73 season. Then the master game comes out in 83 with the 82 season, and you see the QS codes to allocate sacks since that became official, and they did some tweaking on the master charts changed things up. So instead of seeing a lot of ones in the quarterback card, you see some twos because you're seeing instead of like the old blitz, which is like a 4-line drop, the blitz becomes a 2-line drop. Then in the 90s, when you see the game that Al's playing, they strip the master game down, but the cards follow pretty much the same formula. In 99 set, they went to that 2000 edition in the green box. They started using 3 generic cards, and I forgot also that starting with the master game, you have the V ratings for the defenders. It was a V/2/3 would be 2 against the pass, 3 against the run. In the 2000 to 2022 set, they started using V ratings for the offensive players. In 2006, they added the results 37 to 42 to the special teams charts. So most of the cards are the same, but that changes the special teams a bit. That's why Justin Tucker gets that 37. And Ron Taylor is a great Apple football historian and player, pointed out that that's 37 is what gets you the Justin Tucker 66-yarder. In terms of typography, Greg, it's around 2010, 11 when they went back finally and they started, or maybe in 2013 when they redid the basic book again and went back to the big red box like this. Right. That's when you see the sans serif type and what you see now. And what you're seeing now, of course, Denny was doing is the recap, so that the 76 set, I assume. Greg, you're using like the 2018 or whatever that, I forget what that is.
Yeah, it's copyright 2017, yeah.
That's it. And then, Dave, your 78 set with the 2001 Dolphins. Everyone keeps pointing that out.
Yeah, mine at 2021, copy 2021.
Giro kicked forever, you know that.
So I'm using the big red book, okay, and I'm actually using the master book for that.
Okay.
So cool. I have 2011, 2021, and 2022. Those are all still compatible with that master book I'm using, right?
Correct. Yeah. Any card set made from 1983 to now will work with a master book.
Right.
This is the 2008 version.
Or even 82.
Well, yeah.
So that's what I'm using. I'm using this.
Yeah, you got the 2020 set where the results are ordered by field position instead of play type. The only difference really is the 2000s from 2006 forward, you don't get that 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42 in the kicking game. And you see that in the 2008 book. For the 06 and 07 seasons, they issued like an insert chart, kind of like they did when the kicking rules changed in 74. There's that little piece of paper that showed you, well, the goalposts are back of the end zone now.
Remember, Geoff, they used to have it on their download section. They took it off. I don't know. They don't have it there no more, but.
I'm sure there's a million versions out there. We can.
So how would Dempsey have hit the 63-yarder?
So he couldn't originally because that's one of the big things that happened in the 72 set. He did that in 70, and I've got a video. I compared the Tucker and the Dempsey thing, but here's what happened. When they came out with the third and final pre-master game revision, you'll see here that they expanded the kicking results. They added a 50 to 56-yard line possibility with an asterisk. So guys like Don Cockcroft could kick from the longer distance. So originally, with the original set, Dempsey couldn't make that because I forget what it tapped out at. But, obviously a 56-yard line and a 7-yard spot of the kick, there's your 63 yards. And then, of course, 74 blew that out of the water. So you had to add 10 yards to your range on the, it screwed it up a bit.
He kicked that from his 37-yard line.
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that clip 100 times.
Ron, I watched an interview with Alex Karras, and he was saying how they were just mocking him, before they kick. Like, there's no way he's going to make this. They were, yucking it up, and then we know what happened.
The actual Don Criqui video call of that exists. And so it's whatever the lines scored. It doesn't really matter what it was. And so it starts with the kickoff return, some really fast play. And I don't remember who was.
I think it was a pass to the sideline or something like that.
I mean, something like the only thing they weren't doing Hail Marys because Staubach hadn't invented it yet. And they bring him out and it cleared by a foot.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then Tucker did it to the Lions too. He's Detroit. About him, it's like,
and that kick would have been good from almost 70.
Yeah, that was nuts.
That was I mean,
so let me ask you.
I remember what? Yeah.
Do either of you guys play PC football games?
I don't know.
No, you haven't.
The Action PC bundle, I got it.
Okay.
I went right to the 78 Oilers Steelers. I appreciate all the work that they've done on that game. And PT Games now is, Tim Plum. They're going to get data from Sports Info Solutions. I just, I'm firmly in the camp that I want to see the card make the decision.
Yeah.
I want to see the numbers and how the interaction happens. Yeah. I have utmost faith that those PC games are accurate and people love them, but I'm just going to stick with the cardboard.
Well, my question was going to be, and I know Ron doesn't play cards and dice all that up, but my question was going to be is that when you play the PC game and things go sour, I get real upset when with that. But when I'm rolling dice, I got nobody to blame but myself because I'm pitching the dice. And so the question is that when you're rolling dice and things are going bad, there's really nobody to blame. You can't say, oh, the computer's rigged, or they're rigging the dice. This is on you. And so I find that I don't get nearly as mad playing the cards and dice because I got nobody to blame it on but myself.
Dave, I always say that the dice know. And what I mean by that is, take this for example. I've played the 1998 season with the card set that was created by the APBA Journal. Mark Zarb created one for me, and then when APBA came out with it, and every time I've played it, Minnesota always loses in the playoffs because the dice somehow know.
It's true.
Okay, that they're not going to make the big play, right? I got so many examples, but it's just funny to me. It's like the dice are the great equalizer. They know.
I will say this because of my physical issues. The APBA style cards and dice isn't something that's going to work for me, which is too bad because I've seen what Dave does and he loves it. But I've done 2nd and 10, which gives you dice rolls, which is I actually played 1st and 10. Which you had to print the sheets to revise the ratings, and then it was, that's a pure card and dice port. He's just made it so for that. And yes, I understand how that goes. You see how the dice roll goes, or when you know that you call the right play, and you roll the 99, and he's flushed, and then you roll it again, and you see the roll again. I did strat football, which doesn't play as well as what you guys are talking about. I did a couple years ago. I did the Bills-Chiefs playoff game, the divisional playoff game, the one where the Bills gave up the 13 points in 67 seconds. My dad, if he was still with us, would that would have killed him. And that was one of the greatest things I've ever rolled. And I think honestly, because it was a card and dice thing, I will fully agree that cards and dice gives you an intimacy that you just even in a virtual sense that you just can't get from if you've seen my work, that Action PC Baseball is my bread and butter for what I show on the channel. But as far as it being intimate and personal, it's seeing the dice and looking the result on the card.
I got a question that just came to mind. And Ron, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then we'll go around the table. What was in any of the games that you've played, what was the closest to reality moment that you've ever had that maybe creeped you out that said, holy cow, I can't believe I just played this. This is almost exactly how it played out in real life. Do you have anything that comes to mind that you were just like blown away? And I'll give you an example. I was actually playing a game of hockey, and I don't know if it was APBA or Bones or a shootout, but the goalie got hurt. And injuries in the hockey games are somewhat rare, and so I played it as the goalie got hurt and put in the backup for the rest of the game. When I went to the internet and searched that game, the goalie got hurt and they brought in the backup. What are the chances of that happening? That was creepy to me because I'm like, holy cow, this is exactly. Now, the score might have been different, but this guy that started the game didn't finish this game in real life, and in my game, it played on the table. So that was my creepy moment. Ron, do you have one?
I think for a pure computer, it would be I did because my first replay I did online was 78 with Action PC, and I did that Dallas-Baltimore game. And the final score, I think, was in 2 or 3 points of whatever it was that Dallas did. It was an absolute blowout. I think as far as rolling the dice with helpers and all that would have been that Kansas City Buffalo game. Kansas City having to run right down the field and score at the Buffalo they left Mahomes too much time, and I forget who I was controlling in that game, I think it was Buffalo, but we left Kansas City too much time. And to see, again, the magic of the cards and dice, because you can see how it all played out. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think that too. The other one being Fred Sanford nearly taking a no-hitter in a World Series clincher in Action PC Baseball. But yeah, I definitely think that those, because you are reading something besides the text on the screen for the results, just makes those things stick out more for you.
Geoff, did you ever have a moment that was like, oh my gosh?
I saved this one. I pulled this one out. I always love this one. I mentioned that I went back to APBA in '87 because of the '86 Giants, and it was one of those warehouse sales, so you can buy sets for like $5. So I loaded up on 71, 73, 74, 76, I think, 84, 85. And first thing you do, you play Dolphins, Vikings, Steelers, Vikings, and the Vikings. To Greg's point about the Vikings, there's a curse, sadly, across the board, no matter what realm, from poor Minnesota. But I did a deep cut in 74, figuring, Namath goes, and I'm sorry, this is good, Greg, again, when Namath goes to the Rams. So it's 74, week 7, and it's the Rams and Jets. Now, the Rams were, of course, in the 70s were a powerhouse. They always fell short. They lost 3 straight NFC championships, 74, 75, 76. And but they Rams played the Jets. And you would think, at the time, the Rams, I think, were 5-1 before this game, and the Jets were like 1-5. Okay, but the beauty of the system is that not only do you weigh the game, the offense against the defense, vice versa, and you had that old secondary rule where you tamp down the passes. So I just play the Rams and Jets. The original score was 20-13 Rams. Pretty close. It's like, how could that happen? And the Jets led 7-6 at the half. My score was 19-14 Rams. Point off.
Wow. Yeah, that's what makes it fun, is when you get those results. You're like, ooh. It's fun getting different results, but when you get close sometimes, like, ooh. So Greg, how about you?
Yeah, I always consider, it's like, I'm not a golfer, but they say when you hit that one shot, your first one, then you're hooked, and you actually do it down, right down the middle of the fairway. Well, that's the moment you're talking about. Well, God, Dave, I've rolled so many games, it's hard for me to place, but there's one thing that stands out. I was doing one of those mini replays, and I was doing a test for Mark, and he wanted me to do the 2007 little mini replay of the Giants Patriots, where I played each team their season and replayed in the Super Bowl. And I checked Tom Brady's stats after the first 2 games, and I just compared it against his actual stats from the first 2 games, and the attempts were exactly the same, the completions were exactly the same, and the yardage was the exact same. Now, that's on 2 games, but after that, I was like,
wow,
oh man, you can't beat this, man. You can't beat this. So that would, I'd have to use that as my whoa moment.
Yeah. Wow. Now that's pretty good.
So consider.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Considering that you call your own plays in APBA football, how would that even be possible? Unless you knew that he threw X amount of passes. How much game planning did you do beforehand?
Before I play a game, I always review the box scores.
Mm-hmm.
You see, but even with that, Ron, even if you have a plan going into it saying you want to get 38 attempts, most of the time the flow of the game, it's hard to replicate that.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I play enough football to know that.
So for that to happen like that was pretty slick.
Stunning.
Go ahead, that's pretty good. Let me talk about the defensive cards. These right here that you can get from APBA. Okay, the defense play calling cards. When did they come into play?
Dave, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I don't mean to be rude. The creator of that, is a dear friend of Jeff's and I, Ray Dunlap. And anybody out there, Ray just got diagnosed with throat cancer. And if you have any relationship with the Lord or you just have positive thoughts, send him Ray's way. He's the one that created those cards that you put up there. He's an icon to the game, and I just want to throw that out there.
Is he on the Delphi official board, or
he is? But he isn't. He's not frequent on BTL that much.
Okay.
But But good thing is the chance, it's 90% survival rate. So I mean, that's
Right.
I like going in those with those odds. You hear that C word, and that's
Yeah, it's terrible. Well, thanks for pointing that out, and we'll be thinking of him that's for sure.
Yeah.
But when did he come up with those, and when did APBA put them for sale, and kind of how did all that kind of work out?
What would you say, Jeff? Was in like 2016, somewhere in that time period?
Relatively recent. He's really known for his personal matchup system.
Yeah. And
he wrote for the APBA Journal going back to 1964, I think. He was actually a Tampa Bay Buccaneers statistician in the 80s. Yep. His impact in the game is immeasurable. You and Greg and Ray went in the Hall of Fame, APBA Hall of Fame, same time, same class. Yeah, it's around 2016, something like that. And folks swear by him. They like it. They like to make that extra point matter for the defense. It does override the traditional offense versus defense thing, but it does.
Dave, explain those cards.
Well, how I play it, and I always specify how I play it because I could be very wrong. But it's a plus 25 to minus 25, and so what you do is you compare the 11 guys on offense and total their number to the 11 guys on defense on the other team, and that's going to give you a positive or negative number, and that determines which card you use. Okay. What I like about the cards, and I could be playing them very wrong, but I've been having so much fun.
It's one card per team.
That's that's what I do. I take kind of the starting lineup and I freeze those in just while I'm learning the game. Other people, I know Greg, when he brings guys in and out, he'll go and say, okay, now I'm going from +2 to +3 because I've made some changes in the lineups. And I think Tebow does that too. Is that he'll take a different card depending on so I mean, that's when you get really involved in the game, and that's the great thing about APBA.
The difference between the offense and the defense, and that's
your
what card you use.
Now, if I look right here on the plus 25, which is as good as you can get, if you look at this card, you'll see a lot of C's. Okay, so that means it's going to be in the C index, which is better for the defense. Okay, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
If my mom was watching, that's not grades.
Now, if I go to the other end of the spectrum, if by chance a team's defense was 25 points worse, now you look at the card and you see a lot of A's. Okay, so that means you're going to be in the A index a lot. The other team will be. So that means the defense is not that good. And so, what I like about it is the game. As I understand it, when you look at the offense and the defense, if they're within 8 points, you're going to be in the, quote, B index, okay? And I think that's for all your runs, and that will only change with your receivers. That might change to an A if you have a receiver. What I love about these cards and why I use them is that each card has a mix of A index, B index, and C index, so you're not stuck in B. And in my mind, and again, I could be very wrong here, if I am, point it out, but in my mind, when instead of being in the B index, let's say I'm in the A index for this play, that means someone on the offense either made a play or someone on the defense didn't make a play. And conversely, if I'm rolling in the C index, that means the defense is ready for it and they're geared up. Maybe they keyed on the guy correctly, or maybe someone on the offense didn't make a play. And that's kind of how I love to see that variation. So I'm not always in B on every single run. That the idea that, I'm in A index. The offensive tackle made an unbelievable block, and now there's a chance for him to get more yards. So that's how I understand the cards when I play solo. And maybe I'm wrong with that, but I love the variation. And again, the better the defense is, the more C's on the card, and the worse the defense is, the more A. So it does move around, but it's not static. It's very dynamic to each individual play, but it is weighted to whether defense is better. So am I kind of in the ballpark?
Yeah, totally. And it's worth pointing out that it's kind of the obverse of the way the game was conceived. So in the old, basically what you're saying, when you achieved an offensive index, This is the older board, so it was a plus 10 to minus 5. If your offense, you would compare the offense to the defense, and you would see you would determine how many points over under the offense is, and that would give you the index. Whereas the defensive cards will tell you you're doing it from the defensive point of view. So you're saying my defense is +1 or +2 or -4. I don't know that you'd ever see a 25, or you might someday. Yeah. But the defense calling cards kind of, I think, and Greg, you can correct me, the floating index of Howard Alscog, I think. Did he release it in the 89 issue?
Yeah, I think it was the 89 issue, and he did the floating index.
Yeah, so that I think it kind of translates to that a little bit. I'm a firm B index guy because I think, and Greg again will correct here, but Apple works in these different stages. First of all, you get that A, B, or C index, and within that, then these cards are cooked to deal with how many times that team's going to be in the B or C index. You might be in the A once or twice. In fact, we talk about the 76 Buccaneers. You think they're going to be in the C index that whole time. They were actually in the B index 6 of those 14 games.
Really?
A lot of the AFC teams weren't that great. The Bills were 2-12. The Seahawks. The Jets are 3-11.
Yeah.
So but within that B index, even in that B index, those Bucs, they're tamped down. If you compare those running numbers and those passing, Spurrier's card, it's still hard for them to move that ball, and
right.
C index, forget it. Yeah. So. But I totally appreciate what the folks are doing with that. It does kind of add that element. And you're right. It's like, could you ever conceive of, and it all comes down to football logic. So you're playing the 76 Buccaneers. And we interviewed Pat Toomey about it, and he's talked about this a lot. It was like a Civil War battlefield, the injuries. It's not like they didn't know how to play football. Yeah. It's not like they were out of position. They were just beat up, and they weren't gelling. So what you're saying is it's totally valid. It's football logic. We came up to the line, and maybe the Bucs gelled that one play. We just got it, and the defense just fell off. So, yeah, it adds a real cool quirk if you're, follow that line.
Yeah. I think
Dave, can I add a little historical context? Listen, I love Ray, and Ray made those cards. I'm not a fan of those defensive cards, and they're fine, and you use them, enjoy them. The reason I'm not a fan is Scott Fletcher, when he created Fletch 67, and I don't know the exact year he did, but I think it's somewhere in the 90s because it's been around a long, long time. That's based off Scott Fletcher's.
Yeah, I override with this. So this was on your suggestion, Greg. Is that?
But that's Scott Fletcher. Now,
can you explain what that is for those of us who?
Yeah, so what this is an automatic defensive setting card that comes with the game, okay? And there's also an alternate defensive chart where you can roll and see if it's going to be G, S, or D. But anyway, it basically says on 2nd and 10 or more, you're always going to be playing deep. And in one of Greg's video, he specified that even the worst team in the league knows when to play deep, exactly. And that makes sense. And then you got a 3rd and 7 or more, and you're automatically playing deep. So when I roll on the defensive cards, I will automatically default to this if the situation occurs and be playing deep. And then conversely, 4th and 1 or anything inside the 2-yard line, you're playing G, which is ground. So it just, if it's 4th and 1, you're not playing deep. And Greg explained that in his videos. So this will override everything for me, at least as far as, the D's and the
when
G.
you're using the defensive cards, use them during the neutral downs, Yeah, but what I was getting at, the reason I'm not a fan of those, Scott Fletcher created Fletch 67, which is the defensive chart that you just held up, okay? And the reason he did that is because APBA football is solely based off of the offensive cards, right? Okay, you read the plays off the quarterback's card for passing off the quarterback. You read it off the running. The defense absolutely brought nothing to the party except if you had +8, you could put somebody in C index, okay? That's all that they had. There was no bite to defense at all. So Scott Fletcher created this, and I think it was sometime in the 90s when he did it, to give defense some sort of to make it matter a little bit. Because if you look at the difference between a play result in from B to A, it's a yard. So like if you're in B index, and then if you're running it and then it's an A, it's going to be, you're going to add a yard on to what the play result would be. Like in C's, minus a yard. So that's how you separate the good defenses from the bad defenses. The good defenses have teams in C. Now that's 2 yards difference on a carry, you know, that, and what Ray did with those cards is he took away from the strength of Fletch 67, because you're basing the defense off the offensive points. I just do it to where I use the defensive points, use Fletch to determine the defensive alignment, use the floating index that Geoff put up, the offensive index finder system, or the one created by my best friend Mark Zarb, to determine the offensive index. And, you know, so I always said to Ray, I says, you know, yeah, those cards are nice and they're markable, and they're, you know, $5, you know, you can't beat the price, right? You know, and everybody likes a new toy, you know, it's wonderful. But it takes away from, you know, defense doesn't have much strength in this game anyway. So, you know, you kind of took away from Fletch. I don't know if I vocalized it correctly for you to get, but
you know, that's you know, and I actually did one of my first interviews was with I think even before I interviewed you and Zarb, it was like with a Q&A with Scott Fletcher. And you know, I think and Dave, to your point about, you know, on 4th and 1, no team is going to come out in a light line. You're gonna stack the line. So I almost felt like, and this may be sacrilege, and I totally appreciate everyone who's modified and taking the time to try to make this game matter even more. But I've always felt, I wondered if that's not like almost a double jeopardy kind of a thing. It's like, it's already a bad team, you know? So to put them out of position more often than not, is that sometimes, and Dave, like you noted, you know, and second and more than whatever, you have some automatics that you're going to call. But in some of those cases, I wonder, you know, ultimately, you know, it's one of the things I miss in the old game, because defense really mattered, was in the secondary, where it's the old 8-point rule. I know Zarb, I think he didn't like it. I loved it because, and I'll go back to the 76 Buccaneers. They played, you know, they finished their season with the Raiders, Steelers, and Patriots, okay? That's bad. And the Raiders
row, yeah.
Yeah, and the Raiders' defense originally was 41, and their offense 46. So the Buccaneers are in the C index, and it's a 15-point defensive index, but the Raiders didn't have a 16-point secondary, which shuts down the long and the short pass in that original game. So that 1 point shy in the secondary allowed Spurrier and the Bucs to score, you know, move the ball a bit more. And in fact, the original, the Raiders score, the original score, speaking of actuals, the actual score is Raiders 49, Bucs 16. How did Tampa Bay score 16 points against the Oakland Raiders of 76, no less? I got the Bucs to score 17 points. I think because of that just slight thing that they used to have that would make the secondary matter. And if you go back to the APBA journals, folks, by extension, logically looked at the front seven. If you got an average 4 points of that front seven, that 28 or more, you can start dealing with maybe, you know, reducing some yardage or
their defense wasn't bad at all. The Bucs defense, it was their offense that was
they couldn't move the ball. Yeah.
And then they got the Summon brothers for 77 and forward. I mean, that's how there's a reason why they got to the playoffs in 3 years.
I always say, when you play solo APBA football, if you care about defense, and I care about defense because I consider myself a purist, is if you bring to the party Fletch 67, and if you use the innovations, the sack and interception innovation, and Howard's forced fumble innovation, now you brought 3 things to the party for the defense, and now it gives them some teeth, okay? Mm-hmm. And it really, really makes a difference.
All right, so obviously there are people who are going to be watching and listening to this who haven't played, interested in the game, you know, have watched some of Dave's videos. So talking about great defenses, there's 2 teams to me that come to mind. the 85 Bears, and the 2000 Ravens.
Yes.
If you bought the game and bought the teams to, bought that particular season, how are those defenses, because they are so ahead of the curve, how are they going to play out of the box?
The 85 Bears, I'm looking at my the short version of the handbook here. Like I think I mentioned, they're 50. Their base defense was 49 out of 55 points, or if you use the V ratings, they're 50 against the pass, 47 against the run. Basically, no one's going to have a good day against these guys. And, yeah, you don't get the strip fumbles in the game automatically. But
Dieter Brock's going back to Canada.
Yeah, I replayed that 85 season, and the Bears finished 15-1. Of course, they won the Super Bowl. They beat the Raiders in my Super Bowl. And the funny thing is in the week 2, they lost to New England, and they lost by a point on the last play of the game. And,
really?
And I remember there was a big uproar on the site, like, "Oh, there ain't no way that they should lose this." I said, hey, listen, New England made it to the Super Bowl that year, as you know, they played each other, but
right.
And actually, because that goes back also to because the game is read off the offensive cards. Any team that played those 85 Bears, those 2000 Ravens, some of that's kind of reflected in there. Is that
baked in, of course?
So it kind of, that's where you kind of get some evening out. I'm far less. I'm not going to try to match the deeper understanding with the folks who are actually deep in there. But the Ravens, for what it's worth, had a 48 overall defense, 46 pass, 50 runs. So
the funny thing about that team, Geoff, is great, and they are, they're the 2000 Ravens, they're historic. But they weren't even the top-rated defense in the league that year. The Titans were.
Really?
I mean, they were 2. Tennessee had the number 1 defense.
And that's another thing. I don't have their number here, unfortunately, but that's the other thing that's great about APBA football. When any game, when you go back and look at some of the intricacies like that, it's like, oh, wait a minute, how did that, and how does the game reflect that? That's the real trick. Those things that you may not, because lore and myth take over. It's like, but wait a minute, this actually happens statistically. So.
That's matter of fact. That's my next replay. I'm replaying the 2000 season. That'll be my next one. So I'm actually looking forward to that.
Oh, very nice. Question here for someone who's just getting into the game: the basic game versus the master of advanced, whatever you want to call it. What do you think some of the big differences is in that? Without going too deep into it here, and who do you think it's suited for? Like the basic game, the master game. What do you recommend to people, and what are the reasons?
Well, I always say, and Geoff will know, back in the early 80s, there was no difference between the master and basic. It was one game, and it was the master game, and it was thing. And when I hear people talk master and basic, it all comes down to the instruction manual, and it all comes down to Section 2 of the Master Game Instruction Manual. So, I don't care. I use the basic boards, but I'm the master. I use all the bells and whistles of the master game, and like I said, countless innovations. Section 2 is when you implement all that, the bells and whistles, then you're playing the master game. Okay. The boards you're using, and you're just reading it to read results, So, but if I'm saying for somebody starting, I would say use the basic game just to get down to learn the mechanics of the play mechanics, and it doesn't matter if you got the master game book like you. Just learn the mechanics and play the mechanics just like you're doing right now, and people always get too wrapped up on the actual boards. What the whole thing revolves around what's in those instruction manuals. Okay.
Yes, that's a real sticking point for me. I wish they would just kind of do away with that, because the version that you see Al using, which has this nice, beautiful board, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you can read about it, and it's the black box about that shape, right? Mm-hmm. apparently they were trying to make the game more palatable, and they also put it in some retail shops. So they stripped out the screen pass, the draw play, the trick play, which you use once a half, the audible, which you can use once a quarter. They stripped out the goal line defense, the blitz, the 3 wide receiver, 2 tight end, full house backfield, and unfortunately the nickel and the dime. And what they did, when you compare these boards side by side, you will see that if you look at a given play and a given field position in the master book, you've got 2 columns of results for the first and third quarter, second and fourth quarter, and then they even flop that, so it's first and fourth and second, third quarter. You see a number here and a number here, like an 11 and a 9. If you go to the basic book, what they did is they squashed those back in a 1 result column that is an average. So the 11 and the 9 become a 10. Fine. Okay. They also took out, I think, some of the locator results for some of because you didn't have all the plays, so you didn't have screen draw. They, took out the result into the F and W, all those nice things there. But the big problem with the basic game is that you don't know about the nickel defense, and Greg, correct me here, and going back to that old 8-point, 16-point secondary, without that nickel defense, that nickel back is now how you reduce the receiver's offensive index boost. It's not the receiver's grade that changes. It's the effect on the team. So you're a B index team. You throw to Lynn Swan, who's an A. You're in the A index unless in the old game you had 2 defenders in the secondary of 8 or more points. And that would negate the boost unless Lynn Swan, which he never did, had an asterisk. Don Hudson had an asterisk, etc. In the basic game, folks don't know that because that manual is stripped down. And so you might get inflated receiving numbers because you can't reduce that A index. Now, again, it depends on the nuances you play with, but that's a point I think that, I would advocate exactly what Greg just noted, is that Strat is 3 versions in the box. Just go back to that. I mean, I get that it was an attempt to make the game more palatable and maybe more accessible, but the mechanics are exactly the same. The master game, and that's, I and others have created these little shortcuts to show you that if you put in 2 tight ends and you run, you go up 2 lines on the runner's card. So for like a 17 to a 15, you gain more yards. If you pass out of a 2 tight end, you drop 2 lines on the quarterback's card from like a 5 to a 7. And then that also, you would add in.
Can I add something, Geoff? Here's the thing. Playing a master game, APBA football, without question, is the greatest face-to-face game there is. Okay? Anybody that knows anything about APBA would never disagree with that. It's the best face-to-face game there is. So all the bells and whistles of the master game are really more geared to face-to-face play because they skew stats. Okay. And you don't care when you're playing face-to-face. When you care about winning the game.
Right.
You're playing to win the game. Now, when you're doing replay, you're playing solo, I don't do any unnecessary line changes. They're very minimal. I can come off keys, and every now and then if a blitz comes up, because you don't want nothing to skew the stats. Everything's baked into the cards. So,
right.
That's it's great knowing all the bells and whistles of the master game and all the line changes. I know them all, of course, by heart, but I would only implement them if I'm playing a face-to-face game.
Right.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah. And this is a question from Pete, and he's probably asking what I'm doing. He goes, can I just play the basic game format using the master game booklet, which I just showed, so I get the added benefit of having the draw play and the screen pass and the rare plays? And that's kind of what I'm doing. I think that's how I'm playing.
Absolutely.
So I'm
you're just using the book to read results.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter which book you use.
Right. Those cards, there's no different formula for the basic. You don't buy a different NFL set that's basic and a master.
No.
Okay, so they work together. Okay, good. That's good to know.
And these cards are created. APBA football is created for the basic game. It is basically created to be in B index. Okay,
exactly.
And it's not created for all these line changes.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, he says here, I was confused because the Apple website states that the master game booklet cannot be used independent of the basic game. And I think we had a conversation, I don't know if it was on Facebook or email, and I says, I think that just means, they want you to have an understanding of the basic game before you get into the master game. Is it?
Yeah. It's like I use the basic boards, right, Dave? But I glued like on the back page, I don't know if you can see it, all the screen passes and draw plays. I have that just glued on to here. So, I don't care about rare plays because for me, I've played so many games and they come up way too often for my liking. Okay. So, you
used to get with the 08 book, you would get the old version of the master game rules, which encompassed all the mechanics of the so-called basic and master. And this right down gets to the point now where, that's eliminating that confusion to me has been a big mission. And maybe I'm just completely wrong about it, but it bothers me so much when people are confused by this, and that can be off-putting. And it's a sticking point to the purchase. And I really would advocate for considering, just combine them again and understand you don't have to use these rules, just like in the original version of the rule. Here's your original, blitz and ground play. You don't have to use them, but they're there. But the mechanics are the same.
Jeff, I miss the big white boards, man. I tell you, I used to have them pre-positioned at my desk, right? And every move I had was choreographed. I looked like a ninja, man. I had these. It was comical, man. But I loved them, man. I loved them.
It was so elegantly coordinated, I really do miss. I do like the 2008 small book, and I really do love the color coordinated ones that came with the mid-90s. I think that was probably the best thing that came out of that version because it's small type, but they're these boards, but they're smaller. Yeah. So, and I really do. I use that set a lot for those results.
I'm getting good at the book here because I have it off to the side. So I'll roll dice, and short pass. I'll flip the short pass as I'm rolling this. So I'm getting pretty good with that myself with having the book over here on this side. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Now, do you put tabs on yours? I always
I do. Yeah, I got a couple. So I open up. I get like kickoffs, returns, penalties.
Just put these on in.
You don't have a memorized
reference,
He does. He's just
those big white boards, man. I used to, after every replay, I'd have to order a new set because the ink would wear off them. You'd be grabbing them, and you remember the 2008 booklet. Yeah. The color one, the one right there. Man, the colored ink would just wear off that. Because I use them so much. That's why I love the black and white ones. They last.
Yeah. That's a very good point too. Yeah. I think you might have been using one. You must have been at Canton the first one.
Yeah. And
it's just like, talking about game used, man, that thing was relicked like crazy.
Well loved. Well loved. So obviously formations have changed an awful lot. And especially in the last 25 years, no one's running a two running back set. It's, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers. The cheerleaders are running routes. How does APBA football handle a modern offense, a game that was designed, and you're holding up some of the charts for plunge plays. When's the last time you saw anyone run a plunge play?
Those are the old boards. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But so how has APBA kept up with? I know that most of the people who'll be watching or listening don't play a lot of modern seasons, but for someone who would get the game that is new to it, how does it handle all the fancy dancy smancy stuff that we see?
I don't know how. Like when the multiple wide receiver, the 4 wide, 5 wide sets, it's really the same rules as 3 wide. Okay, right. They don't really address it, but what they do though is they've done good at keeping up with fads. Okay, for example, when like in 2016, 2017, when the jet sweep came on board and was the rage. So that's when they changed their cards. They gave some guys, wide receivers, EB, ratings, meaning if they had more than 10 rushing attempts, they'd have that, and you could run that player unlimited outside, okay? Or like this year with putting the coding for running style quarterbacks, okay?
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, so they do things like that to keep up with the modern game. But from the personnel standpoint, not so much. They're not so much. But I always tell people, this is a simple game engine, okay? Do I use a lot of bells and whistles? I do, but they don't result in multiple line changes, okay?
That's a trick.
They don't. So keeping the game simple, you're going to get the best results, okay?
And you can, you're going to do the 89 Oilers or something. You got to do run and shoot. You can put those 4 receivers in. You don't have to worry about love you blue.
Right.
You don't have to worry about that. You've got 4 A-grade receivers. If you're playing face-to-face, no one's going to key them. And, even, solitaire, you can do what you want to do. It doesn't matter. If you're playing the 78 Raiders, you got 2 A-grade tight ends in Chester and Casper, which is just one of the greatest teams I ever, it's beautiful.
It's a fun season. So
you just do that. You don't have to worry about
Jeff, if you don't mind me, if I read something, it's from the detailed rules from the basic game. Selecting lineups, and just select the starters at each position, offensive and defensive for both teams. Regular starters are listed first on the roster. However, feel free to alter starting lineups to match your offensive strategy and your team's talents. You could start the game with 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, or 2 tight ends and 1 wide receiver. You could put anything you want in here, but with the basic game, they're not telling you that you're going to have any additional line changes, okay, like you do with the master game, like, not to get in the weeds, but if you're playing the master game and you go to a nickel defense, okay, that implements the reduction rule, unless the receiver's an asterisk receiver. If you go to a dime defense, you also have the reduction rule, but now it's lowers the offensive pass by 2, and then it makes the run defense, you raise it by 2. So you're getting all these. That's why it's fun when you play face to face.
Head to head, yeah.
Sometimes you could have a play to where there's a 6-line drop.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember us playing a guy, and I think he had 4th and goal, all right? And he came out, and I think he went 3 wide, okay, trying to get me to so what I had a feeling he was going to run the ball, okay? So I went goal line. I keyed, had the correct key. So now it was a 6-line drop because with the 3 wide, okay, you would raise 2-line raise for a pass, but you drop it by 2. So that's -2, okay? So I went goal line. When you go goal line, your defense is 2 better against the run, 2 less against the pass. So now that's a 4-line drop. And then with the key, that's 2-line drop. That's a 6-line drop, right? So when you have stuff like that happen, it's fun. Yeah.
And that's where you pull the audible card if you still have it there. It's like, oh, sorry.
When you call timeout.
No.
You can't change your personnel, but then you can do that EBHB thing.
Yeah.
When you key on something, if you're playing face-to-face, you key on somebody. Is there any downside to keying on somebody if you key wrong?
No, because if you don't guess right, it's no harm, no foul.
Okay.
You're just going to go with the play result of
Okay. Now, a couple of people asked, we did touch on this earlier, but I want to jump into this. If you've played anything aside from APBA football, and if so, what makes APBA football so special to you guys, maybe compared to anything you've played? What is it about this game? Jeff?
Well, I'm a one-trick pony, okay? I don't play any other games. I could guarantee you this. I'm the only member in the APBA Hall of Fame who's never played a baseball game in his life. Okay, tell people if you put a gun on my head and said, "Greg, you need to roll an APBA baseball," I might as well pull the trigger. I'm sure I can figure it out. It's just full of rolling dice. But my point being is, I love APBA football because it captures the essence of the game. Like I said earlier, it catches the ebbs, and football is ebb and flow. Okay. You're going to have the momentum for a little bit, and then the momentum's going to go away. And APBA does a phenomenal job of catching that. And I love APBA because, I don't know, maybe because I was a lonely child or whatever.
Maybe because your dad
I learned how to play by myself, and I learned how to see things in my mind with my imagination. I call it my mind's eye. So when I'm playing a game and I'm really into that game, and I'm in that, I mean, really in the zone with my focus, I'm seeing the shit come alive. Excuse my language. I'm seeing stuff come alive, man. It's just fun. It's just fun.
And that question, and it's a super valid question. And I know folks, and there's kind of, I'm not saying the person who asked that, but I think there's often an undercurrent, like, because, everyone makes jokes about how long the APBA basketball game plays. Oh, I'm still playing the game I started in '74, and I'm starting to feel some of that's creeping in toward APBA football. It's like, whoa. I went out to play.com, Keith Avalone, of course, the great. He's a big APBA guy. He was. I got to play him. I remember emailing him like in 2012 or 2013 because when I was running the Facebook page then, I was saying, well, what are some other games you like? Second season was perennial top favorite. And so I bought a copy, and you see he uses an 11 to 66 scheme for a lot of things, completely different engine, completely. And last year, I got to play him 69 Saints against 69 Steelers. First half with his APBA set, which he actually remembers like the results on the cards. He played that game, APBA football, so much. And then we played the second half with second season. And I was having trouble because he's obviously the designer. He's a genius. He's a god, and he's going real fast. And I'm like, wow. But I get it. You've got matchups built into the charts. And one of the things he does is that apparently, in APBA, the doubles, the 11, 22, 33, 45, that's like automatically good. In second season, as I understood in that brief thing, it's different. It's like but I think that a lot of folks have looked at APBA and they kind of, maybe want to get away. And Strata's a different engine. As I mentioned, APBA, I like having defenders cards. I think they do matter. They matter to me psychologically. If I see Ray Nitschke or Jack Lambert or Chuck Howley, that card, that matters to me. I just want my guys there. And there will be an influence there if they get that, or Richard Dent, with that QS allocator or something like that. But I've collected them all. I mean, 4th Street, Brian Aldrich, he's got a take on that. I mean, APBA informed a lot of design. It really did. Again, with the Strat 50-50 method and defensive cards is a different animal, and people like to move the players. You could do that with APBA. I want to experiment, I think, where I mentioned that front 7. I think you could do, it might prolong the game too much, but I think you could do almost like a poker hand if you want to do, like, I'm going to run left, right, or center, and you can pick 5 defenders and I'm going to pick my 5-0 guys or a couple tight ends, and you can add a little nuance there where you do a point-to-point matchup, a mini index within that. I would probably make the game double. But, I mean, APBA has that capacity to expand. Second season, 4th Street, Inside Blitz, 5D20. I've got them all. Pay dirt, data-driven football. Ron Pizar is an extraordinarily fastidious designer. I just think that the APBA flow, as Greg and Dave said, it's so well replicated. It feels like it's the simplest game. I honestly have trouble, and I'm not maligning anyone there, but I think the simplicity of APBA works for me. It's like index, B index. The cards are different. It works.
It works. I mean, listen, man, you look at the final stats, of games you played. You've done that, Dave, and the games you've played, you compared it to actual box scores. You see a lot of similarities. I've done it with, actual seasons. I'm always comparing. I mean, it comes out, so close, or at least to me, I always say I'm always in search of the perfect replay, and the definition's changed over the years, okay? Because, things, change. If I want it to be exactly like it happened, why would I even play the game?
No,
Ron says this all the time because people says, how accurate is it? And this and that, and this didn't come out right. Ron's always saying, once you roll the dice, it's all fictional. It's all different. And if you want to see exact, go to newspapers.com or go to YouTube and watch the game. You got to get something different. You're not going to get.
Listen, if I have a running back that's a 4.2 guy per carry, I want him to be a 4.2 or 4. 3. You know what I mean? I want to, but I don't have to have the same Super Bowl champion.
It's always fun when you get to that, but you're absolutely right.
I've hit it to where I've had the exact same Super Bowl matchup, and I've had it to where it's not even remotely close. And it's all fun. I've never had. But one thing, Dave, I want to say about Geoff, and what I think is his biggest tribute to the game, is I've never seen anybody have as much access to so many people. I mean, pro ball players, all the interviews you've done, Geoff, over the years on your thing, to where you're, I guess, because you're, first class newspaper man, okay? But to be able to get all these, guys that you've interviewed over the years, I've always found that just incredible. I take my hat off to you.
Thank you, sir. I think the real thing that in this Fifth Apple life to me, we go to Canton again. George Bozeka of the Pro Football Research Association is going to give his opening talk again, and St. Patrick's going to be out there again talking matchup football. And to me, it goes down to I was asked to speak at Play.com about the future of tabletop sports gaming, which, as I noted right off the bat, anyone in that room could talk about that, and they had talked about it. But reaching out, to me, the next step is reaching out beyond the community. Pigskin Dispatch, Darren Hayes, he's got a site where he talks about gaming, and he had a Strat interview, and he had a Keith Avalone interview, and I thought we should talk Apple football, and he graciously allowed that. And he was fascinated by the fact, could you have Mel Blunt and Carnell Lake and Rod Woodson and Troy Polamalu in the same secondary? Yes, you can, because you've got all individual cards.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to talk a little bit about accuracy. This isn't because I haven't played the game, but it's not going to be about Apple football. For 6 years ago, I did the 78 season in Action PC football. And the thing with limited amount of games and stuff is that you can get a result that looks skewed, but really isn't. I'm going to talk about the 78 Kansas City Chiefs, who I think were 4-12 or 3-13, or they were terrible. Yes, this is a long story, and it's one of the reasons why we're doing this show, Gardner. So, you done? That's why I'm here. You done? Okay.
They're 4-12.
So they were 4-12, and as we're coming down the stretch, they were in the hunt for a wild card, which, come on, I'm not really familiar with, the game and all that. How, not that I'm super, finicky about accuracy, but seriously, this team's got, Charles Emerson Winchester as their quarterback. Ever seen a picture of Mike Livingston? He had the David Ogdensteyer's hair, as in it didn't really exist. The poor guy had been, Lenny Dawson's backup for 1,000 years, and he finally gets his chance and can't do squat, and he gets hurt. And so the Chiefs are contending. They're right there with the Raiders and the Broncos for that divisional title. And I start going. Start going through, and was talking with our Red Sox fan, and he said, Ron, they lost 6 games by less than 6 points.
Looking right.
Yeah.
And so when you go through and how could this game be accurate if they're contending? You lose 6 games in a 16-game season by less than 6 points.
That's right.
I got them to the playoffs. That was as I was telling Dave the other day, I had a walk-off safety. Denver beat them on a walk-off safety. We're at the gun, and Action PC football lists success by percentage, which, it's RNG under the hood. And the one play I ran because Kansas City couldn't throw. In fact, they ran a single wing that year.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they ran a single wing. Not that I remember that firsthand, but I remember reading about that. I had a 1% chance of breaking a pitch play for a touchdown, and he got tackled in the end zone, which Gardner has never let me forget. But, but when you look at that sort of thing for any football game, including, well, how could this happen? Because it is so limited especially when it comes to wins and losses. So have you two ever had a team that overperformed or underperformed?
Oh, yeah, I have. I've had numerous times, and it's not a knock on the game.
Right.
You brought up a key point, is the point differentials of wins and losses. It's misleading. I'm doing a 76 season now. It's just looking at the Raiders record, during the prep phase, and you'd be shocked at how many games they've won by a point, 2 points. So I don't know if they're going to go 13-1 on my tabletop.
Right.
They've already lost the opener to Pittsburgh. I don't know if they're going to do that. And if they don't, it doesn't bother me any, because in real life, hell, they could have lost to the Bears that season in Soldiers Field. I think that was a 2-point game. There's so many.
Well, the 76 Buccaneers, they lost a handful of games by mere points, and they were leading in some of those and just couldn't get it done.
They actually could have legitimately beat Miami that year, right?
Yeah, there was 3 games they almost won, so they could have been 3-11 instead of 0-14.
Exactly.
Jeff, did you get them a win?
I got them 3-11.
You got them 3-11, no kidding.
Yeah, and a lot of action.
Now that was with the old cards, right, Jeff?
Correct. Yeah, and which doesn't have the scrambles on the quarterbacks. But you want to talk uncanny? Another of those uncanny moments. The first 76 Buccaneers franchise regular season touchdown was Danny Reese, I think it was, returned a fumble for a touchdown. In my replay, it was offense. It was the tight end Bob Moore returned a fumble for a touchdown. So it's just when that takes over, it's just like, okay, and now I'm kind of watching. But if you go to our APBA football handbook, and that is derivative of the APBA, the Ed Zach baseball handbook, which is why I'm here in Cooperstown, because we're doing our second baseball tournament in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and we named it for Ed Zach, who passed last year. When I heard about this book from Pete Simonelli, because I dropped out at the time it was being sold, I said we need a football handbook. And in 2013, I did a scouting report every day for the top teams, and bad teams. This year, I'm doing scouting reports for those what-if teams like 7-7, 8-8, and I talk about the swing game. It's games that you lost by 7 or fewer points. And that's right. How are you going to card that? And that's, again, the beauty of the APBA flexibility. Right. It's just, you can get them just close enough that, yes, you can take them all the way. I don't know about some other games, but putting it on paper can be a tricky thing, and the simplicity of the APBA system, to me, continually delivers that ability to replicate that. I mean,
then too, Jeff, is you got the nuances of the card maker and of ownership. You look at Seitz. He hated the AFL. He wouldn't give a 5 out to anybody. You think with John, with John Herson. John, he hates rookies, man. It's like I was talking to John the other day. I says, how can you not give Sauce Gardner a 5? That guy is an all-pro, All pros get a 5. And he says to me, Greg, he's a rookie. I says, yeah, you hate rookies. Because he's a rookie, he won't give him a 5. I'm thinking, so you have that kind of stuff you're dealing with too. But mental biases, Yeah.
But you don't want to have a type of game where, let's talk about the Patriot Giants Super Bowl, where 99 times out of 100, the Patriots should have won that Super Bowl. But as the Giants fan, resident Giants fan here, you still want to have, a chance for the Giants to win that game, as unlikely as it is, because the Patriots really were probably the greatest team I ever saw.
Yeah, they were
going in there. And so let's talk about some of the nuance about that yes, the Patriots are going to win 99 times out of 100, but there is that one time.
Sure, I know, Ron, when I played that game, I was telling you about the mini replay, the Patriots, I don't forget the final score. It's been a few years back, but they just pounded them. It wasn't, It wasn't even close.
Now, I played the 2007 Patriots in 2014, the National Card Football League. Huge shout out to them, Jerry Zajac and the boys, and Greg and Bobby Porter. They came up with a Skype method of play in 2013. Steve Bigfoot Myers.
Oh, wow.
Well before the pandemic. We have the video demo they did in Canton. The following year, they did a global tournament because Phil Malloy, great innovator, 2-minute time.
Oh, yeah.
Australia. He's a Niners fan. And I took the 2007 Patriots. I ended up in the final against Mike McCune and his 89 Niners. And I was broadcasting or, live tweeting and live Facebooking. Swear to God, lost with the 2007 Patriots. It's one of those games with whoever has the ball last wins kind of
right.
Thing. I kept medium passing instead of long to Moss, and everyone's saying long to Moss, LP Moss. And that's, you lost. So it's bad coaching, too. User error can also play in. But, you've got to – that's right. You've got to have that. That's why the rare plays on the kickers. You might have a guy who's a good long kicker but doesn't have the Justin Tucker field goal leg, but a couple of rare plays will get it for you for a guy like, whoever, name your guy.
I had a hoot playing with Jerry and his fellows in that ACF league when I played with them that year. That was that's Skype. It's a fun way to play. I enjoyed that.
And Dave, didn't you have the rare play with the Tom Dempsey rule that actually affected Tom Dempsey?
Yeah, I had a rare. Yeah, Dempsey's kicking with the Bills right now, and
yes.
they were playing Pittsburgh week 1. I don't know if it was overtime or the end of the game, and I think it was overtime. And Dempsey was lining up for a 32-yard field goal, and I got a rare play. And what I'm doing is I'm playing out all the rare plays. And then when I get to week 2, I'm going to use, I think it was Greg suggested, somebody suggested that each team gets one rare play. Then someone else said you roll a dice. And if it's 1 to 3, offense calls a timeout. And then 4, defense calls a timeout. 5, you go with a rare play. And 6, you get a different result. And I think that was neat. So I'm enjoying the rare plays, but I can see how they would get old. But anyway, on my rare play, I'm like, oh no, Dempsey's going to kick the winning field goal and I get a rare play. What is going to happen? And the rare play was the defensive lineman got a piece of the ball, but it continued over the bar for a good field goal. And I was like, okay, it's good, and I thought that was pretty neat.
But you actually had one, maybe it wasn't the Dempsey, the illegal shoe.
Danny White went back to punt for the Cowboys in one of my first games that I ever played, and I got a rare play, and he had to come out of the game because he had an illegal shoe. So I had to bring in my backup punter to kick for that one play.
Oh my
yeah. I thought that was hilarious. So the rare plays, they can be kind of fun. They do. They add something to it. All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
And again, you talk about that. That came out in 1983. That big red board with those RPs, and now and that's translated over. You see rare plays in other games. Just saying, APBA has been consistently ahead of the curve. They look more like this now, but you look at the milestones. They came out just before the greatest game ever played. They came out with a big revision just when the Dolphins go undefeated. They come out with a revision just when, and I think Strat might have done the same when they came out with the sack totals in '82. But that's when APBA came out with the rare play. So this game has been influential and ahead of the curve. Now you can say there are some things you should do with it, maybe. And as Greg pointed out, John Herson has always been known. He's a football guy. He was Lombardi's caddy or something, right? So,
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, so he's a football guy. He's just going to...
All right, so we got some more questions from myself and also from the audience. Before I get to those, we had John on the show last year, and we were talking to him. And one of the things, I hadn't been playing football at the time, and I said the thing preventing me from football is the cost. $120 for a season is a lot, and I understand you get every card and the whole bit. And we got talking, and he said they tried to go with less cards and players on a team sheet, and didn't go over well. And I honestly had a hard time wrapping my head around this. Man, if I could get a season for $60 and have the key players on cards and have everybody else on the sheet, I think that would be the way to go. And that's where I was at the time. Now that I've played the games and I have all these cards here, I've kind of come over to team card. I do like having everybody, even the offensive linemen, even the receivers who you don't really roll on their cards. Cards and dice, it says cards, right in cards and dice. And I do, now that I've played it, and yes, it's more expensive, so it means I'm going to have less seasons than I normally would. I do like having everybody. Once you get them in your hand.
You for a second, Dave. A guy like me, I play every game. Okay, so it breaks it down. It's pennies on a dollar. When you do the math, and the set's expensive, $140 or whatever it may be. But when you play every game, man, I'm getting my money's worth.
Well, that's what I've been saying is if I play I'm this close to finishing week 1. So that's going to be 14 games, 78, right? 14 games.
Yeah, sure.
And it's taken me a long time. So I'm at about 3 to 4 hours a game because, again, I'm in no hurry. And so if I'm at 3 to 4 hours a game times 14 games, what's that, 56 hours if my math is correct? So if I spent $120 in a season, $40 in a game, that's $160. So at 56 hours, am I getting $3 an hour worth of enjoyment out of this project? I would say at this point I'm getting my $3. And if I play week 2, am I getting $1.50 out of it? So that's how I'm breaking it down.
I think they hit the sweet spot now, and they've tried a lot of different ways, but 50 cards is great. I used to hate doing a replay of cards to where you wouldn't have a guy's card. I remember doing the 1993 replay. Mm-hmm. Well, Randall Cunningham started the first 4 games for the Eagles. Well, he didn't even have a card.
That's right.
Okay. See, so now you don't have that. Now you got 50 cards per team, but everybody that touched the ball, if it's a fumble recovery, if it's whatever it may be, has a card. So you never run across that issue of not having a card. The only time that it's clumsy is when you got a guy that's played on multiple teams. And it always happens. I got the game set up. I'm playing it. Say it's a kick return. Okay, I'm using locators, and a guy name comes up. Where's his card? Shoot. He's not. He's
in the other deck.
He's not. He's on the other team. So now I got to go to Pro Football Reference. Find out where he goes, then go get the card out. That's the only thing that's clumsy about it. But
the
now you have all of the things, and I hated the perforated sheets. Sometimes a card would tear. Yeah. I'm working my tail off the time. I don't have to come home and tear off the ends. I like having those nice, beautiful cards that I don't have to do nothing with. And now with the 50 per team, hey, they've answered everything.
And you know what? And again, if you go back to what we're doing with the handbook on Facebook, I'm comparing a lot of times the original sets to the current sets. The game came out with a base set of 30 players. They only started using the XFs in the 69 original sets, so now you could get 4 extra players, and they were perforated, but they're perforated better, and it was like 4 cards, not 50. In the 76 season, they went to 32 base players and a 5th XF, and then they stayed with that until 97, 98. As Greg mentioned, they didn't have an official set. It was in the APBA Journal. 99, they started the generic cards, which I mentioned, and when you've played it that long, you're suddenly like, what's happening? You're missing, it's like, oh, these guys didn't have stats. Yeah, but their point ratings matter. If you lose 2 4-point linemen and you've got a tight index, 33 versus a 35 offense defense, that's going to drop you an index. It does matter, Sure and also when you look at these new sets now, $76. Again, you get the 4 quarterbacks. You get Hanratty. You get Larry Lawrence. You only got Parnell Dickinson and Steve Spurrier originally. Okay. And now if you're really fastidious, you want Larry Lawrence to get that 5 incompletions on your tabletop, you can do that or whatever it was, And I think it's a great honor to these guys. It's like, hey, I played. So it's got a collectability factor, I think.
Yeah, I really think they've hit the sweet spot now. The only thing that I could think of that would make it perfect is if they had, how they have 2 cards for some players, for if they're a returner, that guy. Well, if a guy played on more than one team, maybe have 2 cards. Because I'll tell you, run into issues. You'll have one guy that's playing on one team that might have been a 4.1 running back. Okay, he goes to another team, then say got a better offensive line or whatever the case may be. Now it's a 5.0 back. Okay, so now he's carded when he's playing with the other team.
Yeah,
it's skewed.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it was a Jack Rudney or somebody on the Chiefs line or somebody in the 60s. It was the guy. He was a Packer. I think he was the first player announced. Whoever the first player was announced in Super Bowl I. He went to the Chiefs or back and forth, but it really mattered because he went mid-season and came back. And exactly like your point, it's like you got to go find him. But also that really had a trajectory to his career.
Well, I'll tell you, it does when it comes to the production off the card. Because sometimes a player is carded for one team, but when he goes to the other team, he might have performed way better or way worse.
Right.
And the card's not realistic to. Yeah.
How many seasons do they need to redo to be current with? Because 79
or 70 seasons. And,
was that it?
470 seasons. A lot of the 80s, the 90s. Yeah, there's quite a few to go.
Is that something that they're thinking about doing?
Yeah, I mean, I know they'll get there eventually one day. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now here's a question from Geoff, and this is something that Ron and I talk about all the time. All right. And the question is, and we'll pose this out here: if you were asked to pitch APBA football to a newbie, how would you sell the game? And that falls on someone else who talked about the expense of the game. And I'm trying to find that comment there. So how would you guys pitch this game to a new person and factoring in that they're going to be paying $120 for a season? How would you guys, well, Geoff, we'll start with you. If you're going to pitch that to somebody, how would you pitch that?
This is, I know some people are big into the PDFs. I mean, certainly the printed cost is a big issue, but if you, and let's be clear, I would never pitch a game to anyone that often because, frankly, the game that works for you may just not work for anybody. It matches my expectation of being able to put a full lineup on a table and be able to pull guys and have those points matter, to have this third string, left tackle, pick up a squib kick on a kickoff and have all these cards right there and be able to manipulate those in a draft league or do whatever kinds of projects I want to do, New York guys versus New Jersey guys, whatever, I don't know. And be able to manipulate the teams to an extraordinary level of precision without having, say, a team card, which I totally get. Team cards are great. I just like having all the individual players, and the game is so infinitely malleable that you can make it sing, dance, do whatever you want to do with it because it's not so over-codified to try to account for a really deeply realized vision, which today's football designers are fantastic, and people are attacking the same set of stats. That's always the question. I just think it's that flexibility in terms of it's a super simple game. It's a super accurate game. And, the cost analysis you did, I think, is really the selling point, too, is that you can come up with so many projects with this. I mean, you can with a lot of games, but when you've got individual cards, I want to do a thing where you just put them in a card shuffler and create a lineup. If you want to do something whacked out like that, you can do that. So I think it just really, if you're a fan of that kind of flexibility, that's a huge selling point to me.
Okay. Greg, how about you? How would you pitch this game?
Well, it's like the game book you look at is like the Razor, okay, and then the card sets are like the Razor cartridges, okay, and you buy a book and it'll last you for a long time, okay, and I know that it's pricey. I get that, trust me, but it offers you the flexibility to play the game as simple or as intricate as you want to do it. And like I said, for a guy like myself that replays every game, I get my money's worth out of it. Okay. But I'll tell you, I wouldn't buy it if I was only just playing a handful of games. I don't have money to throw around like that, but if you want a game that resembles pro football, okay, and captures the essence of the game, captures the ebbs and flows, APBA football does that, okay? So hey, listen, it's still around. It's survived the Madden, era. It's still relevant, and I actually think that it's growing. I mean, I truly believe it. Guys like you, Dave, have done a big part of it with the show that you have, and you broadcasting all the games that you're doing, even though they're new to the game. And I think that's a beauty in itself. You got a new guy out there putting stuff out. Hey, if he could do it, I could do it type thing.
I think I've had 8 or 10 people tell me they picked up the football game in the last week since seeing me play on the channel here.
Yeah, see, you're an inspiration.
To me, it's the simplest game for the accuracy. That's maybe a quicker elevator pitch because I understand there's narrative approaches that folks are doing, and there's a lot of cool stuff. And Sean Coleman's a guy who plays APBA League and second season league, so he's a cross pollinator kind of guy. And, it's just going to hit, any game's going to hit you a certain way. It's worth invest in the great teams of the past, one of the volumes there, or a couple of Super Bowl sets like you just did. Take a dive. It may just not work for you. There is no right game for everyone,
Yeah. No, like Curtis says, the cards, meticulously crafted cards and components, they bring it to life, and it feels like a real football game.
I mean, you sometimes when you play it.
For a casual football fan, I mean, we talked about indexes and this and that and the other thing. I know that it's not necessarily, super deep as far as you don't need to know what a Tampa 2 is to enjoy the game. You don't need to be, watching Gruden camp to do that. For someone who might be on the fence, who is, let's say, a casual fan, how would you approach the game? And I'll let the three of you answer that. We'll start with the host. For someone who isn't a super football fan, what can APBA offer you that you might like? We'll start with Dave.
I like the APBA system. Okay, that's the big thing for me. Is I like APBA hockey and I like APBA baseball. I like the charts. A lot of people don't like charts. I happen to like the chart. I like the fact that I'm going to look at a card here, get a number, go to the chart, and I'm going to find out what happens. And Ron, we talk about this all the time. I don't like making a ton of decisions in games, and so for me, I'll pick the play and let it ride. Kind of, sort of, and it just feels like a football game. Every game I play, no matter how good, how bad, and sometimes it's 6-0 at the half. This is a snoozer. And then I come back with a Tom Dempsey block kick that hops over the bar to end the game. Tampa Bay won their game against the Giants. They drove it down, and the guy hit a kick that I didn't expect. O'Donohue hits a field goal. Who would have thought O'Donohue would hit a field goal in 78? And they beat the Giants. So it's those moments there. And this game, the basic game anyway, it just clicked right off the bat. Because I was used to the hockey and the baseball going to the charts. This game just worked for me right out of the gate. And I thought it would be a lot more difficult than it was. And I've seen people play and keying on players and this and that. And then you got your master rules. And for me, I was like, never mind. I'm not spending $120 in a season and be confused. And then it was APBA 66er. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago. He was playing the game, and he just had the phone sitting over his shoulder. And I'm like, this looks ridiculously easy. And here's this guy playing it, not struggling. Here's a run, and I'm like, I gotta try this. And I tried it, and it was just blown away at how easy and how fun it was. And at first, you saw the video. I was intimidated by the cards. I was setting up completely wrong. I was going through, okay, is this guy a starter? No. Right. Is this guy a starter? No. And I was like, man, I'm going to be all day. And I was getting frustrated. And then I said, okay, how about if I separate offense and defense? Then I can find my starters and my kickers. And now I know the symbols. And, I can set up a team now in 5 or 10 minutes. Whereas before, I struggled with that. So I got off trying on the wrong way. But for me, the game was never a problem. The setup for me was my dragon the sleigh, and I just went about it all the wrong way. But now I got that down. The game right out of the box played fun for me. I'm liking the master charts because it gives me a couple different columns and different results. I do like how with the first and the second quarter are a little bit different for me. The rare plays have added a lot to me. And I really, really do like when you get a fumble, there's all these different columns for fumbles. And they're all and interceptions too. And they're all, as far as I can tell, they're all relative to where you are in the field.
Exactly right.
And it's like the APBA baseball. It's like if it's first and second and you get a roll, that result is because it's first and second. Whereas if it's empty bases or bases loaded or man on second only, you're going to get a different result. So those fumbles are fine-tuned to where you are in the field. And it took me a couple of games to pick up on that because I'm just thinking they're just generic ratings. I'm like, you know something? The way this was worded, it knows I'm inside my 10-yard line.
Exactly right.
And that, so for me, just everything is covered. So it's not like generic fumbles and generic interceptions. It's really all tuned to where you are on the field, and it just feels like you're in a game, and the game knows where you are and what's going on. And when it happens, it's just completely believable. It really is. And so for me, I'm getting a fantastic football experience. Not that I haven't from other games. So let me just clarify that. I have played plenty of other football games that I've enjoyed immensely. Okay, and I'm adding this to that group of games that I enjoy immensely. So I like the APBA charts. I do like having all the cards, and just how I'm going to go out on a limb. I think this is APBA's best game. I have the golf, I have the hockey, I have the baseball. Now I have the football. I think the football is their best game.
That's the right answer. Yeah.
So for me, Ron, that's kind of what I would say.
All right.
Well, like they say, you can get the game up and running in 5 minutes. I remember watching my friend Geoff there. He did a video on it. I think he had a timer, if I remember correctly. You were trying to see if you could read it to start a game as a newbie in 5 minutes. And, listen, it's...
And can I add one thing? The APBA football community has just kind of embraced me so quickly.
It's a great community.
You know what I mean?
And the APBA community in general is just a great community.
And let me say, there's a lot of communities out there. The play community, the strat community, payoff pitch community, and they're all really good, okay? This one, though, people just reached out to me. And I reached out to Geoff. He's like, what can I get you? Okay, I'm Geoff. I got an old season. How do I play that? Here's a couple suggestions how to play old seasons, And then, Greg reached out to me, and you were giving me suggestions on things like that. And, on Delphi, we were going back and forth on a few things. And someone reached out to me, too. And was like, hey, I got a couple seasons. Would you like to trade with me? Because I'm just not using them, and you're into the game, so we traded some seasons. And that's how I got, 1984. I got 1984. I'm so excited, And then someone reached out to me, and he goes, hey, Dave, I ordered 2 1963 seasons by mistake. Would you like one? And he sent me 1963. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then another guy reaches out on Facebook. He goes, would you like to borrow my 1979 season to play the Buccaneers? And he goes, it's an older season, and I'll send you the chart so you can play it. But he goes, I trust you that you'll take care of it and send it back to me. And so I've been playing 1979 off to the side. It's been amazing. People just come out of everywhere, and they're like, so nice about helping me out, and whether it's with the videos or whatever. It was just amazing what happened with this game. It really was.
It's a phenomenal community, incredible community. It really is. So many times I could sit here and tell stories after story after story of kindness that has been bestowed on me from fellow APBA football or just APBA people in general. I always think of Johnny Cochran, the great Hall of Famer, and Geoff shakes his head, a good friend of Geoff's. He always says APBA's like a family, and you go to your first convention, they'll make you feel right at home, man. I tell you, if you need to make that trek down to Alpharetta for a convention, it's just a really good time. Yep. To be sitting in a room, it's kind of slick when they do the baseball tournament and it kicks off and you hear all the dice go at once.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that.
Geoff, 200 guys or whatever. It's cool, Yeah.
What did Greg Wells say about football? He said it may not be the most popular game, but it's the loudest.
Well, to me, in APBA, baseball is king, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But when it comes to face-to-face, and I'm talking any game in the world, nothing can compare with APBA football. Not for the face-to-face experience.
Yeah, this game takes me, like I said, I'm between 45 minutes and an hour for a quarter to play. And Yeah, and you know something, it doesn't bother me in the least. You know, if someone said, "Oh, it's going to take you 3 to 4 hours to play this game," but I'm playing this now, and it's 3 or 4 hours of just, you know, it's kind of like, you know, Lord of the Rings is a 3-hour movie, and it's like it wasn't long enough. You know, I want more, and that's kind of how I look at it. You know,
it's that, and I play a game in like
90,
75 minutes. You know, it all varies. The more you do it, the better you get.
I used the helper. I was showing you the Pro Football Helper, and I played a game the other night offline myself, and I got a quarter in 31 minutes playing with the helper. So I was like, okay, that's the way I'm going to go. So I'll do that. You know, why don't you guys finish answering Ron's question, and we'll get to my next point.
Go ahead, Geoff.
The key to me is. Now I lost my train of thought now. Remember when it came out is that it's, you know, we talked about how it's like you watch a game. This came out at a time when the NFL was just about to really explode.
I got to go let my dog out.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's good. Be a good doggy daddy. Yeah. It plays the way I think you talked about the casual fan.
Right.
I'm not worried about, geez, Joe Green is stunting around to the center, to the A gap or whatever. I don't, you know, I'm a casual fan. I want to run the ball. I want to pass the ball.
Right.
I maybe want to send my receiver. I want to send Drew Pearson around end one time, you know, and I want the thing I see on TV. I'm not watching the line play. I'm sorry, that's sacrilegious.
Yeah, no, you're not the only one. But you know, when you see a price tag of what they charge, you know, it kind of goes, well, what does this game do? You know, and I think the point that you made and that Dave made is no, it really is. Call your run play, call your pass play, refer to the index, run the play, move on to the next play. And so you're getting a lot for what you're paying for, and you don't need to have a PhD in football.
That's right.
In order to enjoy it. I think that was the point I was trying to get you guys to talk about, was that it's not that the learning curve is not steep, and you don't need to be.
Oh no, not at all.
You know, you don't need an Ivy League education in football to enjoy the game. And, you know, I'll ask that question to Greg, who's probably played 15,000 games, right? No, you know, so.
I don't know. I've played a lot of games. I don't know the number. I wish I did know the number. It's quite a few.
How many seasons have you redone?
I've replayed 25 seasons.
Nice.
So that's close to 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And that doesn't cover all. That's just documented games. Okay. You know, I mean, I've played countless games that ain't documented. You know?
Right. So we're talking about, you know, for a casual fan who doesn't sit there for 18 hours on Sunday and that, you know, talk about why APBA is a good game for that.
Well, it's just real simple. If you don't need to know nothing about football, but if you know a run play, if you know a pass play, you got the book right here: short pass, medium pass, long pass. You know, run, not hard, very, very simple. It's not like you have to sit here and figure, oh God, you know, they were in this formation and the defense is in you know this formation. You know, no, it's simple. You want to come out the gate and say, you know what, I want to run. I want to throw a short pass. Okay, throw a short pass, you know.
Greg, and I'll ask this to Geoff while Dave is looking through the chat. Is there one team, good or bad, that really has surprised you from what you thought would happen with them?
Jeez, I guess there's... Well... It goes back, Ron, to the conversation we had about point differentials.
Right.
And this goes hand in hand with that. I know I try to give you a bad answer, but there's a lot of times to where I always said how I grade a set is I go with the +2, -2. You know, if I want their record to be, I want it to be within plus or -2 of their actual record. Okay.
Yeah, right.
To me, that's an acceptable level. There's sometimes I've had it to where it's 4 or 5 games. You know, I think on some cases I've had it worse than that. You're playing a dice game, you know, and football's a limited season anyway, you know, so it's like, you know, you have those things against you to where you're going to have some wonky stuff happen, you know. Greg Wells has always wanted me to do like a what if type replay. All right.
Right.
And I'm not wired that way. But so I said, well, the only way I could do a what if is I'll take the 82 season, the strike shortened season.
Oh, and make it a full season. Okay.
And I play the whole season. Okay. And I had one of those, I don't know if you remember, Ron, when you go to the gas station, they give you the schedule and that little card that you can put in your wallet, Well, I had one from the 82 season.
I don't need to put this in the trailer, Ron. Yes.
So I used that and I replayed the whole season and it was wonderful, So, but with that replay, the Saints won my Super Bowl. I mean, they were,
Wow.
So you have weird stuff happens,
That's
really is
great.
A great study, that one.
That's great.
Is that up on BTL?
Yeah, it's on BTL. It's on you can go to my website,
I will.
And on my left-hand side, I have Ogard 62.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
And I have everything you want to see. All you could go is there. You click on it, and then you could click on the individual team. It's all hyperlinked, so you can see their stats. Everything posted.
Would never have guessed it would have been the 82 Saints.
Well, you have crazy stuff happen, you know? And, hey, listen, that's what it makes it fun. You know?
Okay, Geoff, top that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I go back to the 73 and 74 Vikings, but I guess I'm surprised that they just, even the way they're carded, I mean, they've got the talent, but they just, even in that format, they just couldn't. There's something that comes over. It's like you feel them seize up or something. They just
the dice know.
Overwhelming. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The dice know, man.
I mean, they should have obliterated. They could easily have obliterated the 74 Steelers, but for that defense. I mean, that even with Zarb said you sent me the 74 Steelers of his to try. Either way, it's like on paper they're hard to move, But it's those Vikings teams really become an issue sometimes.
What I always love is I have certain teams I always say that hate my tabletop. Yeah. And I have some teams or players that love my tabletop. Okay. And thank God, my idol, and still this day is Joe Namath. Okay. So Namath, he loves my tabletop. And
that's good.
He's a 50% passer, right? At the best times, that's what they were the era. But people don't put enough credence in the timeliness of a roll. Okay, you roll that 66 or you roll whatever the snake eyes, but it seems for me the great players get their fortuitous roll on the third and long, on that critical crunch time thing, and that's what really separates. And for me, that's what makes it so fun. Is
3rd and 22 for Stabler the other night, 25-yard pass.
Of the timing. It doesn't get enough airtime. And that's what's so beautiful about this game is, you'll hit it. You have some guys will just hit that roll at the right time.
Yeah, that makes it fun.
That's what happened in Canton. We had the final was, it was actually the semifinal, I think. 2017 Eagles against 2019 Chiefs. It was Chuck Steinmetz, the Eagles, against Dave Weatherby, the Chiefs. And Mahomes, man, I mean, he just lit the place up at exactly that right time. It's like no mods, no nothing. It's just now it's going to happen. He turns out. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Hey, when we talk about length of the game, I don't know if you guys read the latest Sports Sim magazine from St. Patrick, but he had a good opening monologue.
Yes,
okay, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let me give you some of the highlights. The question I get asked a lot is, how long does it take the game to play? And he goes, well, I have a question for you. Are you going to play the most basic version, the advanced version, or super advanced? Are you using dikes, facts, or a combination? How informed are you about the game? How long have you played the game? Are you skipping rules or doing it your way? Are you playing alone or with someone else? Will you be interrupted by the wife or the cat? Are you playing straight through? Are you taking breaks? And boy, he hit it on the head, hit it out of the park. How long does it take? Well, are you a fast player or a slow player? Do you know the game inside and out, or are you just learning? So when people are like, it's taking you an hour to play a quarter of APBA football, it's like, well, yeah, I'm kind of just learning. And I'm taking my time picking plays, and I'm writing down every single play. So, yeah, it's taken a long time, but I did kind of jump into a game, and I did play a quarter in about a half hour the other day using the helper. So, I mean, again, between 30 minutes and an hour to play a quarter, that's where I am. But that's a big difference. So, depending what I'm doing, and I thought it was a great opening article that he had, because, again, I get where people are asking that question for. I get where they're coming from. They want an idea. Is this going to take 8 hours? Is it a 20-minute game? But again, there's so many questions to ask. Are you a fast game player?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's just like anything, fellas. The more you do something, the better you get at it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Common sense. And if you automate it, I done replays like the 2011 replay I did. All dice. I mean, everything was dice, nothing automated. I've done a few replays, just all dice. Now, they take longer, but, it's, you enjoy the time. I enjoy the time, but I like playing a game and, getting it done. And, I'd wake up when I was I'd wake up to go to work. I'd like at 4:30 in the morning to get that 45 minutes of roll in, so I get a half in, get my mind started.
Yeah,
So
do you do a game a day? Or how many games?
I usually average 2 games a day, sometimes 3.
Okay. And if the game is good and you're having fun, time shouldn't matter.
Oh, absolutely.
I love APBA. I love APBA football.
All right, so I got a bunch of rapid fire questions here for you guys. And anybody in the chat room's got a question about the game itself, now's the time to put it in. Okay, here's some of my questions. Can you do a QB sneak in this game, and how successful are they?
Sure.
So is it an inside run or outside?
If you do it out of the box, you do an inside run. But if you go to my site and look at the opening post, and you go right there, it's the site criteria. It's where I have my top 20 searched items on my site. Mark created a quarterback sneak chart that you could download for free right off my site.
Oh, nice. So
either you run an inside play with the quarterback's card if you're just using the boards, or if you want an actual quarterback sneak, you could go to my site, ogard62.net, opening post, site criteria, find the QB card and download it.
Oh, fantastic.
Manning.
Phil Malloy's got one too, does he not?
He does, and that's also on my site.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, what about the squib kick? Someone sent me to your site.
I got one of those on my site.
I looked at the squib kick
table.
But it's I went there and it just said I'm squib kicking, and that's all it said, and I couldn't find anything else beyond that. So I didn't know if that was a joke or if that was serious.
Look at the top, like I said, the opening post, the site criteria. There's a squib kick table in there.
Okay. On a kickoff, a guy returns it, 25 yards, and then there's a holding and brings it back 10 yards. How do you score that? Is that a 25-yard return and a hold, or a 15-yard?
Usually there's a asterisk there to where it curtails the returner to a 15-yard return, and then you're doing assessing the 10-yard penalty from there. And a lot of times now you're doing it to where you can't even go the full 10 yards because you're inside the 20.
Right,
to where you got to go half the distance, then land on an odd hash mark,
Okay. I had a play, I threw for a first down, and then there was a penalty, and it was unsportsmanlike on the offense. What do I do with that? So is it, the first down?
Be a first, let's say it was a 12-yard pass play, okay? Let's make it easy. The ball's at the 20, 12-yard pass play to the receiver. So you as the scorekeeper, you're going to log it as a 12-yard completion, give it to the receiver. You're going to annotate a first down, okay, because it's a first down. But unsportsmanlike conduct's a dead ball foul, meaning it happened after the whistle. It's not during the act of play. So the first down counts, but now you're going to assess that 15-yard penalty back. So you're going to move it now to the 15-yard line, and the offense is going to have first and 10 from the 15-yard line.
Okay. So you would be.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
So the first down's at the 32.
All right,
I bring it back to the 17.
17.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
17.
Yeah.
My math was much.
And it would be first and 10, not first and 25, right?
It'd be first and 10.
Okay.
Because you were awarded the first down, right? But so now it's a dead ball foul. You just move it back, and it's first down and 10 at the 17-yard line.
Okay. When I get a result of pass 24 TH, which is obviously a flag on a play, does that mean that it's completed for 24 yards, and then I look to see what the... Okay, I wasn't sure about that. On a punt, I was reading about rushing the punter, and how some of the numbers may change. What is the downside to try to rush a punt? I know the upside is getting it blocked and hurry.
Well, I guess the only downside you could say is you got to have an automatic fair catch on the back end of it. You can't have a return. Okay, so if you're using Section 2 of the Master Game Rules and you want to do a max punt rush, okay, they'll tell you, all right, certain numbers, you need to decrease the punt by 5 yards, and the returner cannot return it, but you have to roll to make sure that he didn't muff or fumble the punt. Okay. That he fielded it.
Okay.
Caught it correctly.
Now, to clarify, on a punt, the receiving team is the defense, correct? On a punt. So if there's a fumble, I'm reading it anytime during the punt, offense is still the kicking team and defense is the receiving team. Is that what I understand?
This is one thing I don't like about these new cards, and Geoff could attest to it, where the old cards, when you had the offensive and defensive lines, they would have on the offense, the defensive team is kicking it. He's the punter. Okay, so your PA would be on the defensive line. Now they just throw the coatings on the cards with no consideration for if it's an offensive or defensive thing.
Right.
But what I'm saying is on a punt that if there's a fumble and it's D, whatever it is, 10D, whatever it is. Defense would be the team with the ball on the punt, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's different than a penalty where.
So a penalty, though, the team the receiving team.
At the start of the play, the platoons at the start of the play. All right, the team that's on offense and the team that's on defense, is on fumbles. They stay static.
Okay.
The platoons. It's the platoon at the beginning of the play. On penalties, it's the team that's in possession of the ball.
That's the offense.
Change of possession, then the defense becomes the offense if it's an interception, Okay. But on a fumble, it's how it started the play.
And I'm curious because these are NFL rules. I mean, so have you found in your experience that other games explain the penalties better?
I found that there's a couple of games that I played that said, on a punt, the team punting is offense throughout the play and the team receiving is defense throughout the play. So any penalties or fumbles that happen to the offense are the punt. And so it's consistent. Whereas in this case, penalties on the offense are on the receiving teams, but fumbles recovered by the offense are on the kicking team. So it's kind of
penalties are quite quirky in a lot of games.
Yeah, so that's just weird.
Just remember that rule of thumb, though. It's the key to remember that when it comes to fumbles, it's the platoon that started the play.
Okay.
Yeah. Penalties, it doesn't care if the ball changes hands 10 times during that crazy play. It's whoever's in possession of the ball is considered the offense at that time.
Okay, I got it. What do we do about special teams? I mean, so if it happens to be kicked to the up back and it's picked up by D6 or D7 or 06 or whatever, how do I do that without having to set up a whole...
Years ago, and you could find it... I apologize to keep saying it on my site, but I got so much stuff on there. It's, it's been around for a long time. Years ago, I studied all the special teams, and I broke it down by each different coverage unit and each return unit. And I mirrored the APBA designation codes to reflect how they actually do it in pro football. So you could download, I have one little cheat sheet on there that you could download all the codes, and So if you're playing a game and it says 07 recovered a punt return, you could just look at it and say, okay, who's 07 on this punt return? And then it'll tell you the position. Then you just find a player.
Okay.
Me, when I do replays, I create special team rosters.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was
That
wondering
I
about
mirrored
that.
off of that chart. So is it time consuming to do? Yeah. But I have special team rosters for every team. So when it comes up, all I got to do is look at it, see who was in there, and then I just make sure that player was playing in that participated in that actual game.
Okay. What do I do about this? What do I do about this?
What do you got there, Dorsett?
I get two Dorsets. How do I know which one is for which?
Well, you have FRK there, so if he recovers a fumble, if he fumbles or he picks up a fumble, you're going to use that FRK for that and read from the K column for fumbles.
So-
Okay? His normal run play, I'm sure the card numbers are exactly the same.
Yes, but he's also a breakaway back, so he's got those 3 Ks in the R column.
So
on that card.
So this is my fumble recovery only,
Right.
and this would be my normal Dorset card.
That's exactly right.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Special teams real quick.
Yeah.
Sure.
Lazy player, that's me. Usually I don't, I mean, Greg's method is more exacting for sure, but oftentimes if it's like a D6 or an 06, so just go to the bottom of our stack of cards and just say, oh, here's a 2-point lineman and there's my 06.
Oh, I see. Okay. On the newer cards, and I pulled out this especially for you. That's what I was digging.
Right there.
That's what I was digging out earlier when we started the show because I had it behind me. QS15. What is QS15? And on this guy over here, he's got a QS2.
Marty Lyons, yeah.
So what is QS?
That's for you to use if you're using the allocation chart in the master game. Yeah. Okay, that's where you plug in those numbers into the tally sheet. And what I did is, I hate to keep sounding like a broken record. You go to my site. I created a video specifically addressing the allocation. It's 3 videos I made that cover the entire process because it's a time consuming process. Okay, but it's a master game feature.
Okay. So it's just.
But you go there, watch the video. It's so easy to learn. You know, for me, I'm a visual guy. It's a lot easier.
So that's finding out maybe who sacked the quarterback.
Allocating the sacks.
Okay.
So basically, what that is just the QS15 means he probably led the team in sacks. That what they do is they make you add up. Everyone has a sack, a QS code. You add those up, and you come up with a range, and then you start rolling against that range. So Gastineau takes up like 15 pieces of that range, whereas Lyons takes up a small piece.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's really time. I don't like using. I don't use that no more because you if you're adhering to the letter of the law, the player has to be in the game to get it. So you could be looking for a sack or an interception or an individual caught a reception, and you might have to roll 10 times before you found somebody that was actually in the game. I don't do that.
No. That's why this old allocator was ideal because that never happened for the receivers and for interceptions. If they'd kept this kind of style and used it for quarterback sacks, that would never happen because you read across sooner or later and you're going to find the guy's code here. Whereas that allocator system that came out in 83, yeah.
Okay. Now, this guy here.
Lance Smell.
If I can get that to focus in on me here. He's got a V54. What is that?
Yeah, he was a great pass linebacker. I tell you, in Jet history, Lance Smell, without question, is the best weak side linebacker they ever had. And he was great at picking off passes. So he's rated correctly there. He's a 5 in the pass defense and 4 against the run.
So that's what V is. So it's pass and run. And now how does that? Run. How would I use that number in my game?
Well, if you look at your score sheet, you tally up all your 11 players on defense, and you look at their V ratings and just write them down. You know, like Lance Mel, 5.4. You know, Mark Gastineau. I don't. You have his card. He's probably straight 5s. I don't know.
There
what he was.
Nothing there actually.
Okay, he's a 5, so he doesn't have a split rating. So for guys that have just one thing, and if you're using the split ratings, you would just duplicate it. You'd write a 5 and a 5, okay? And guys like Lance Mel that actually have a split rating, then you would do a 5 and a 4, and you would tally it up for your 11 people.
Oh, okay. So I would have a defensive pass rating and then a run pass rating.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
yes.
okay.
It might be like defense might be 39, run might be 37.
Okay. No, I get it now. Okay.
And see why this is beautiful, why this is so much better is I always say, look at the Deion Sanders rule. Might not never been a better pure shutdown corner ever in the history of pro football, okay, than Deion Sanders. But he didn't like to tackle.
Yeah.
Okay. So I always had a little problem with you give straight 5, of course, he's an all pro.
5'4", 5'3".
I see. Okay.
Now with the split rating, I guarantee you don't have no 5 when it comes to the
run game.
I see.
Run game.
Okay.
But you have a choice. You have a choice. You can use, if you have a guy with a V rating, he's got a flat rating. So you can either use the straight rating or the V ratings.
Okay.
And with the older sets, you only get the defense with the V rating. With the more current sets, you have them on the offense as well.
No, I think it's 06, Jeff, that they started with the offense?
02 or 2000.
Was it 02? Yeah, I know it was the early 2000s.
Okay.
So, yeah, but they've tapered off.
On this one here, Klecko, I got a FR0. Does that mean that he can't read?
What that means is, now this is critical. That means that it's a quick reference. If Joe Klecko recovered it, in your mind's eye, he picked up the ball and he was tackled immediately. Okay. If you go to Pro Football Reference and you looked at fumble recoveries, if the player did not have a fumble recovery, he's not going to have FR number. That's why when Denny did these 76 cards that I'm using right now, that didn't exist yet. And I had a call with him and John. I said, Mark's cards, you have a quick reference of if the guy actually recovered a fumble or not. And from there, they came out with those ratings. And I love that FRO because that's quick reference. Oh, yeah, he recovered it. He didn't return it for any yards. So if he does not have a FR on it, in your mind's eye, he just fell on the ball. And you go to Pro Football Reference, it'll show that he never returned a fumble.
And I think there's some W0s they've done on occasion.
Yeah, it means it's intercepted, no return.
So if there's no FR rating, if there's no FR, can I assume that he's going to try to return it?
No. Listen, let me give you two answers.
Yeah.
If you're playing it, I don't want to say correctly because that's
strictly.
If you're playing like me and you're doing a replay, if he doesn't have an FR rating, that individual's not returning it because you could have some wacky results. You could have a lineman who never had a return have a 70-yard touchdown, okay?
Right.
If I don't want that, okay? So if he doesn't have an FR rating, that individual fell on the ball and he ain't advancing it.
So
if you want to return it, it's your game.
What would be the difference, though, between no FR rating and FR0? Isn't that the same?
It's a big difference.
If it doesn't have it. If you look
at the fumble return number, okay, let me come to it.
Because if he can't return the fumble, then neither can return the fumble, correct?
No, hold on. Let me. It's fumble return and block punt return. And block kick return. Okay, so you could have a guy that has a fumble FRO number. Okay, that means he recovered a fumble, but he didn't return, so you would stop there. But if if there was a block kick and he recovered it, you would roll and you would look at that card's R number and you would go to the same column for the results. Okay. That's why it's so critical, that FR rating, because it indicates that he can't return a fumble, so you're not going to have those crazy whacked out 75-yard fumble recovery by being a diehard Jet fan, I did an 86 replay with them years ago. And Kenny O'Brien ain't fleet-footed, okay? No. They used to call him slow beat, okay? All right? And they say Kenny would take a sack because he didn't want to have anything interfere with his completion percentage, okay? He was one of the highest sack quarterbacks in the game. I was playing a game to where Kenny O'Brien recovered the fumble and ran it, advanced to first, 73-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, it was within the framework of the rules, so it counts. But is that actual? APBA is supposed to be, reflect real football.
Okay, so
not crazy stuff.
So FR 0 and
means
no FR.
It means he recovered the football and he didn't advance it at all, and you just move on.
Okay.
If he does not have an FR rating, that person can, if you're doing it, if you want statistical accuracy.
Just jumps.
He just fell on the ball.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. All right. So that's all I got. Pat said, ask about Geoff about the solo boards.
The solo boards. Oh dear.
That
seems like I had a little solo method that's like a.
Okay.
I don't have a solo board, do I? I wonder. Man, I might be totally forgetful. I did want to make a point, a couple of things, though. Special teams, in the old days, they actually made you calculate the A, B, or C index to make that matter more up until the last revision, just so.
Okay. Do you guys play with weather at all? Any weather? No?
No, because everything that transpired during the course of the season, weather conditions,
It's all baked in.
injuries, whatever, it's all factored in, already baked into the cards.
Although, and you see, that's one of the great things about APBA. It's like that fun exercise. I've seen guys like everyone's going to be in the C index, and if it's like a monsoon, certainly second season has regional and seasonal weather results.
Yeah.
So, people want it,
All right,
And you could do it. And also, not to keep saying this, but on my site, one of Phil's innovations, he has a little thing in there about weather. Yeah. Okay, so you can. Me personally, I don't, because it's already baked into the cards.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, but if you want to do it to where, hey, listen, it's that. I'm trying to remember the game. It was the I think it was '93 season. The Pats and the Jets. They played in a monsoon. It was a 3-0 game or 6-3.
Yeah.
So you could,
I just thought about that. Curtis, if a 2-line drop comes into play using the master game, how do you handle it if the result is better than the original result?
Too often.
Well, only time I do it, like I said, I limit line drops, but I will have it on a key. So if it's a 2-line drop on a key, and sometimes the 2-line drop is bad for the defense, my house rule is if it's a key, I always give the defense the benefit of the doubt to get the better result because they keyed correctly. They shouldn't be punished.
I kind of do the opposite, though. I figure they keyed, but this guy still kind of read it and in the old game, if it's you're not even supposed to drop if it's not a game like on a run, you didn't even drop. So you could do it to where he was too amped up. He had him keyed, he missed it. So you could look at it different ways. All
right, my last two questions here, then we'll wrap this up. One, you were talking about the popularity of the game, and then we were talking about them maybe remaking some of the seasons, like, filling in the whole 70s and the 80s. Do you think that's something that they will do? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think the popularity of APBA football is worth it to John at APBA to remake a season to sell?
Yeah. Well, let me answer that with a question. We've been doing this for nearly 2 hours talking about APBA football. It is. There is an interest and this is a niche community, okay? But it's even getting bigger.
It will. And look how excited you are with the '84 season, which I think has been out of stock.
It has been out of stock.
Everyone wants the '85 set. Everyone wants '77. Yeah. I wanted '79.
Yeah,
and the new boards. Yeah, it'll sell.
Okay. And the last question I got is something that you've already touched on, and Ron and I ask everybody that comes on the show. What do you think the future of tabletop gaming is? It's an older community. We're getting older. Video games have captured the young kids, and they're all, now they're playing on their phones and the whole bit. What do you think the future of cards and dice is? And I'll start with you. Geoff, we'll start with you.
Absolutely wonderful. I've said this a lot, and I said this in a couple videos in my talk at Play. And ST's got a version of this where he says he wants a customer with a 30-year window. I say that we all know the lifespan of the cards and dice person, historically, at least in sports, has been, I played as a kid, I had real life, I dropped it, now I'm retired and I play my butt off. I say that, and I emphasize the difference in the scope of Euro games and, the breadth of tabletop games, the Kickstarter games, Instagram games are all over the place. So people want cards and dice games, and they want the beautiful cards, and APBA cards fit into that because they've he's really refined it back to where it needs to be quality wise. I think you're going to get more mature folks. You're not going to get. You might get some kids. We're always a niche. I was saying in my talk that even in 1984, we thought that was the golden age. I was the only kid in my school who played this stuff. Only one, and I tried to introduce it to a guy who really liked sports. He wouldn't get into it. It's a mindset. I think what's going to happen now is that this is where I put my money, is that I want to see people who will mature out of digital and video, not totally, but there will be two types of people. There are people who will mature into, I want this immersive, tactile experience. And then you also got to go after the personas like the stat heads, the accountants, people who love numbers to manipulate that. Outside of the fantasy league, where you're actually doing something and making maybe not too many decisions, but you're making decisions. I think the disposable income, it's not a bad word to say I want to target an older audience because they're going to want those bookshelf games. They are collecting the hell out of these Euro games that are not cheap. You talk about price, look at the Kickstarter games. Now, they're beautiful games, but one of the big knocks on Euro games is I play it once and I put it on the shelf. Where's the value in that? Let's go back to that APBA value that you so well stated. So I think the mature gamer is huge. And as I mentioned with Pigskin Dispatch, there's a massive market right now, never bigger, for folks who are nostalgic for that, pre-free agency sports. That's a huge untapped market that I try to tap, that I think that's why we're in Cooperstown. I want to create content around that. And that's why we're going back to Canton. 2 halls of fame in a year. I want people to hear rolling those dice. If we do Cooperstown bigger, we're going to be in an area where you're going to see and hear people roll dice. These people don't know about these games because these are niche companies with small, no marketing budget. Yeah. I think there's huge upside.
Ron, you always talk about, in 10 years, people are going to want to play Tom Brady.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Steph Curry in basketball and Aaron Judge in baseball. And of course, what you can do with APBA is draft leagues. And so your fantasy team, you may not have drafted the full defenses, but let's say that, Brady was your quarterback and Marshawn Lynch was your running back. Here's a game that you can do that you can play your fantasy team that won you a championship. And there's millions of people who do it. With the legalized sports betting that we have. There's more people paying attention to that. Nostalgia will take effect of it. And again, we've gotten questions of, and obviously you can do this more with the computers because you can update it there, is what can I do that will give me an edge when I go to my virtual bookie about projection seasons and stuff? People are going to be playing those games to try to take an advantage over the house.
Yeah, could be. Greg, what do you think? What is the future?
Well, I see it even in the restaurants I go to and think they'll have a like board night. Okay, it's everything's cyclic, and fellas, things in life they come around, and board games have made a big comeback, and I think a lot of it has to do is, hey, listen, man, we're so plugged in. All right, you're plugged in your phone, you're plugged in on this. Your job, everything's automated, everything, you're on the computer all the time. The board game gives you a break from that, takes you away from that, and gives you time to decompress, time to just relax. And that's why I think that you're seeing a comeback with board games. And, hey, listen, none of us got a crystal ball, and none of us know what, is it still going to be around? But it's been pretty durable so far.
That's right.
And it's overcome a lot of stuff. You fantasy. from fantasy football and all that stuff to all the video games to everything. It's still around. The game, so.
Yep. Justin says there are many more choices for games too. Do APBA Strat see as much demand with other games becoming popular? I would say yeah. I would say yeah because APBA and Strat are kind of the granddaddies of it all and the whole bit. But you have the Play Company now who has a bunch of games. Joe over at Payoff Pitch has got a fantastic baseball game. Grant Fines is producing some football and hockey games that are fantastic. For me, I don't order anything less from APBA or Strat because of the other games. I just incorporate all these.
Strat had a record year in 2020.
Yeah,
I'm sure all the other gaming companies did too.
I like to play a lot of different games myself. So for me, it's not stopping the growth for me because I just got a new game. I'm going to play it, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop playing anything else. It just means I have more games to play.
I mean, APBA and Strat are still going to be the gateways. In fact, over here at Cooperstown, there's about 7 APBA baseball and about 9 Strat baseball games right high on the shelf. So, I mean, it's going to be harder for those smaller companies maybe to get that distribution, but they're more agile in that they're getting out to Dice Tower or whatever, so there's a trade-off there that, certainly if you pick up APBA, it's like, oh, you're going to hear other people say, yeah, I like that, but I play these blah, blah, blahs. And it's like, oh, there, now you're hooked.
Yep. Get your stuff on Amazon.
Yeah. Ron says that all the time. Put on Amazon.
You got to put your stuff where people find it.
Yeah. Okay. Todd thinks the future might be APBA Go and Strat Max, where you're playing on the computer or on your phone, I found that I had the Strat Max on the baseball for the phone. It worked fine for the most part. There's a couple things that bugged me, but for the most part it was okay. But I find that I'm just not a game player on my phone. Yeah, and it was a long enough game that I would play an inning or two, and that was it. And I'm kind of done. I don't like.
I think the demographics for that are considerably younger than us.
Oh, absolutely. They're definitely for the younger kids to get into that.
To get younger people to do these type of games and for them to realize it's important.
I'm interested to see what happens with that.
It's also going to be, I think, for Strat, a good R&D. People say let's say they want to play the 1969 baseball season over and over again, but they might find it's 2001 that does real. You're just throwing a number, year out there. It may not be what we think it is, and so, I'm sure they know what APBA Go's numbers are as far as what people play for the baseball seasons and stuff. Yeah, you need to know what how to target.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting. All right, well, we want to thank Geoff and Greg for coming on and talking some APBA football with us.
Fun.
Yeah, it's a game that I'm totally addicted to and playing the heck out of right now. And my 78 season's going well. But I think I'm going to wrap up week 1, and then I'm going to play either something else or maybe a different season. I definitely want to dive into the 84 season that I got. I still got my $76 over there that I want to play, and my 79 season, which I'm
go download that special teams cheat sheet, so you could have it for your,
Yeah, I will.
Make that issue,
Yeah, I'm going to have to go over to the site and find a few things that we talked about here.
Yeah, you got there's a wealth of stuff there.
Nice. All righty.
Tips. I do have one real quick tip, if you don't mind. It goes back to your field position point. If anyone is inclined to go and dig up your old pre-master whiteboards, you'll notice that those by field position, that's very you have very as written results for fumbles and interceptions. You can apply the newer books that have those W or F 65 and go to those locators based on the field position you're in. So if you're in a short pass between the opponent's 10 and 30, you can look at a newer book and just apply those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so if you are so inclined.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out because I do want to play my $79. I'd love to have that remade, though. So I can play. I do like the newer charts. I like the newer cards. Even in baseball, I like the newer cards and the whole bit, and the same with hockey. So anyway, all righty. So I want to thank you guys for coming on. So again, any final words, Greg, Geoff, any final words before we sign off?
Well, Ron, it was a pleasure meeting you. And Dave,
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on the show. And Geoff, it's good to see an old friend, man.
Yes, all praise to what you, Dave and Ron, have done for this hobby in the past 5 years. I kind of wish I was episode 221 because that's my birthday, but we're so close. I know Greg, and I am always ready. Just email us and we'll walk you through the game and we'll demystify the things that are kind of weird. There are some weird codes and things, but once you get your hands on it, Steve Ryan there, former last year's Cooperstown champion, walk yourself through it a bit and the penny will drop, and
That's a Hall of Famer, Steve Ryan, man.
That's right.
Sure.
Yep.
That's right.
All righty. So, Ron, me and you will wrap up the show. You guys stay with us. Don't sign off yet, but we just need to kind of wrap up the podcast part of the show. And anybody that tuned in live tonight, thank you for tuning in, as we had some great guests on talking some APBA football. So, anyway. All righty. So, Ron, this is episode 220, correct?
Southeast Ohio.
Southeast Ohio. We're talking to you tonight. So anyway, ways to get a hold of us. Digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. Digitaltodice@yahoo.com. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. So, and again, thanks to our guests for coming on the show. And hopefully we'll have you guys back on at some point and talk some more sports here. But we're going to sign off here. Again, guys, don't go anywhere, but we're going to stop the show. And again, thanks to everybody that tuned in to episode 220. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.